The broadcast is live. Just as I cough.
Broadcasters may not be live, but the show is.
But the
It is
show
now
is.
100 degrees. Well, not right now. It's not 100 degrees. It's probably 95. But that is why I am sweaty. Today I'm sweaty.
Wow. You got 92 out there
No,
right now.
thank
In the
you.
middle of a
It's
heat wave.
88 right now.
92 and humid. Oh, the humidity is only 46%. It was like 80% yesterday.
It's 100% right now because it's getting ready to rain.
Humidity. What humidity?
If you don't know what the humidity is, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
Or not.
Santa Monica, Bondi, and Capricabana. Oof, you bitches. Beaches. I mean beaches. No speak English. Good. Beaches. Like Bette Midler, right? That was her movie.
Mm-hmm.
Beaches. It took me 45 minutes to start up my computer this morning.
Windows update?
No, old. I actually ordered a new Mac Mini that should be coming sometime soon, but my 13-year-old computer, some mornings, it just won't start. It's just like, I'm 13 years old, something's wrong, go ahead, try to figure it out.
That's the one thing I like about mine. It's got a solid state drive, and it boots up in like 30 seconds, if that.
Oh, yeah, all new computers have solid state drives. The problem with solid state drives is their smallness and expensiveness. You know, my new one's going to have a 1 terabyte drive. That's not going to fit anything of mine. In my old, I had a matter of fact, I had to buy. Where are they? These are hard drive docks. Because I've got 4 hard drives in my old computer.
So you got to set up a server.
Yeah, I've got an 8 terabyte hard drive is my main one, a 4 terabyte hard drive, and I think two. I think the other 2 are 2 terabyte hard drives.
Well, I have one external 2 terabyte.
Then I've got another external 2 terabyte drive. So it's like I can't. 1 terabyte solid state does me no good.
Yeah, I need a 2 terabytes drive because of the thing about my terabyte drive is close to a decade old, so it's probably going to die soon.
Yeah, get that. I actually back my hard drives back them up off site. I pay a service, $5 a month, and it backs everything up. Haven't had to use it, thankfully, but knowing it's there is like, okay.
Yeah. It's amazing how much you can fit on a tiny little hard drive now compared to 50s and 60s when a computer would take up an entire room.
Smaller. Hello, David McKenzie. Good evening. And
I just saw Gus's comments there. Okay, now I get what he's talking about.
Comic shop news this week. Jennifer Blood is back. Any of you guys ever read any Jennifer Blood? Because I haven't.
Never heard.
Nope.
But in the description, I think it was a Garth Ennis book. And I think what's weird is I think he's the guy who sets up worlds for people now. Like what was that? Crossed. I know that they hired Garth Ennis to first write Crossed, and he kind of set up the whole Crossed world, and then they just kept making Crossed books without him. I wonder if they did that with Jennifer Blood too, because she's some sort of vigilante who's against mobsters, and still wrapping up his day's work. From reading the description, she's some vigilante who's against mobsters, and she died in prison at the end of the first. So the first thing they have to do is figure out a way to bring her back from dying pretty definitively.
So is this that girl in a leather cat suit with a gun?
Yeah.
That's original.
Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, some people say.
It'd be even more original. We'll put her in a post-apocalyptic story.
and driving around in a motorcycle.
Jennifer Blood. Back in circulation. Yeah, so I'll probably never read it, but
if that was an image book back in the 90s, the blood would have had some sort of a quantifier at the end of it, like blood strike or blood blade or blood storm,
or just put some umlauts over it, or a strike through on the O's. Some nice painting technique on the cover, even if the image isn't particularly interesting. But that's what this cover got me thinking about, the difference between technique and imagery and being an artist, and how sometimes I'm more of an imagery guy, but some people are technique guys. I mean, technique. It's like they want to see a pretty woman, and they want to see it done in a good technique.
It depends on the artist for me, because there's some guys who have really good technique, and I find their artwork boring.
Yeah, I mean,
and like I said, some that have great technique, and it's like, wow, this is fantastic.
And it all depends if you're responding to imagery or technique too, because you can, especially with comic books, there are tons. Like when I say, think of your favorite comic book cover, probably imagery is what comes to mind.
To me, it's a mix of both.
Well, more than when it comes to comic books, especially, I think, because there wasn't a lot of technique in comic books for many men, not until the digital age, really. It was all kind of the same technique, pen and ink. So they had to work with imagery.
Yeah, I'm not talking technology. I'm talking about actual.
Yeah, I'm talking technique. I'm saying when making a comic book, when you're doing a comic book in cover in 1982. You were using pen and ink.
Yeah.
Maybe there are different styles, but all the technique is the same.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking what you're calling technique. I'm thinking style.
No, not style.
Okay.
Technique, meaning like
the actual physical process of making the artwork.
Making this leather look as realistic as possible is not style, it's technique. Mm-hmm. You can choose to do that a few different ways, but it's the technique that matters. It's like you can do it terribly. You can decide you want to make realistic leather and do it terribly, and the style is still the same, realistic leather, but the technique is lesser.
I got
you. Mm-hmm. Remember when Dell Gold Key had painted covers? Because that was the only way that they had good art in those comics.
Yeah, the painted covers are almost always better than interior art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By a large margin in some cases.
Were those style or technique?
See, I would say technique, because the style, there's a lot of crossover in the words. Mm-hmm. But the different techniques would kind of be how the technique once again would be if you were going for a realistic painting and how you accomplished that realistic painting. If your technique was good, then it was like if you were comparing it to a regular unpainted comic book cover, I could see how you'd say style. One style is paint, but if you were comparing it to other painted covers, you could, once again, style and technique both come into it, where it's like if you have three different artists all trying to do a Frank Frazetta oil painting style, it would all come down to their technique. Who pulled off the technique right? Who was able to figure out how to put the paint down? So that's where like they're similar words, but not always the same kind of thing.
But there's another layer there too, because not only for Zeta did he have all that technique, he was a master at dynamics.
Well, he was good at imagery too.
Right. Well, he was good at its depiction of motion or anticipated motion. Right. Is almost unequal.
Even when he was doing poses, you could see things moving. There, you can imagine the wind and the lightning and the character
kind of like Kirby, but a completely different technique.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But he was also, Frazetta was a master of imagery. Just the picture, it's what the picture is of is interesting.
Yeah, the composition. Yeah.
Right. The composition, the staging, everything that comes into making the picture. It's figuring out what the picture is going to be. Like a lot of modern covers are all technique and no imagery. It's like, think of an Art Germ cover. The imagery is, the black cat standing there. What people like about it is the technique he uses to make the black cat pretty, attractive. That's what people like. That's what people like about the Art Germ cover. No one homages a lot of these modern covers because there's nothing to homage. The imagery isn't there. All I know is less pretty girls often have better technique. Just this week, watched a video of Neil Adams talking to artsy kids, emphasizing technique. Yeah, technique is often how you get your imagery too. I mean, everything here is interrelated.
I wonder if Neil was trying to sell them on his Batman Odyssey book. Because the last time Tim and I were at Heroes Con, we talking to Neil Adams. Boy, we got a sales pitch and a half.
I was just reading something today about Neil Adams, Mike Nasser, and Ms. Mystic that I'd never read before. Where Mike Nasser accuses Neil Adams of stealing his Ms. Mystic credit. Because I think back in the 70s, he said, this is Mike Nasser's story. Back in the 70s, DC, he just started working for DC a little, and they asked Mike Nasser to come up with something, and Ms. Mystic was he started to come up with. And then Neil Adams got invited into the project as the writer, and they both came up with Ms. Mystic together. And then if you see the earliest Ms. Mystic credits, it's credited to Mike Nasser and Neil Adams. And then Mike Nasser, like in 1980, kind of left comics and left artwork and moved to, what was that?
Didn't he also have a pen name that he used for a while?
Netzer, I think he used too.
Yeah, because I remember
Mike Nasser and Mike Netzer.
Yeah, several years ago, Frank Miller had some interview or whatever, and he had very unkind things to say about Mike Nasser.
Yeah, so. But anyway, he left, and meanwhile, he said Neil Adams contacted him and said Ms. Mystic is creator-owned now. They're doing it for Pacific Comics, and Mike Nasser actually drew the first issue of Pacific Comics, and Neil inked it, I think, or something like that, or re-inked it later on. And it's like in 1981, Mike Nasser came back to Continuity Studios, and Neil Adams said, "Get out of here. You're not welcome here." And he thinks that was because that was when he was inking Ms. Mystic. He didn't know Ms. Mystic came out in 1981. He didn't find out until 1985 that it came out from Pacific Comics. And now, and one of the things he was saying is that, this is totally, not like Neil Adams. This is against everything Neil Adams stands for, so he can't believe he did it. I just found it interesting. I have no idea what's true and what's not, but he had a little reproduction in there of the first Ms. Mystic with his credit in it.
It would be interesting. Well, being omnipotent by itself would be interesting, but it would be nice to be omnipotent and just see how many of these different stories that are floating around over the years, what parts of them are true and what parts of them are not, and which parts came from true from a certain point of view, so to speak. So, yeah.
Evening, Terrence.
Hello, Terrence.
Oh, and another thing you should check if you're on Facebook, and you two are, I just got this hot tip from Walt Simonson, which I did. Do any of you guys follow Ralph Reese? Do you know who he is?
Yeah, I know who Ralph is.
Comic book artist from
I've got him as a Facebook friend.
70. He's been doing reminiscences of his career, and he's working at Continuity Studios right now. And he's just writing up stories, and a lot of the guys who are there with him are writing their stories too. So it's a really interesting bit of comic book history right from the horse's mouth. So if you go friend Ralph Reese on Facebook and follow his stories, because they're kind of interesting.
I actually have an interesting story that involved Ralph Reese.
Yeah.
Iron Maiden in 1986 released an album called Somewhere in Time, which has it's a well-known album cover because it's got Eddie on the front as a cyborg futuristic Eddie in a Blade Runner kind of city, and there's a lot of little references and Easter eggs in the back. That art was done by an artist named Derek Riggs, who is famous for doing Maiden's first few album covers. Ralph Reese did some artwork for Metal Hurlant, the French version of heavy metal.
Right.
As came out as a cover, and if you look at that cover, you realize, hey, that's where Derek Riggs got that from. It's almost like Derek, you need to give Ralph Reese a royalty check. Because the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, he completely swiped that.
Wow.
He swiped the style, not the actual composition. But I just remember seeing that. It's like, that's straight from Ralph Reese's cover. Yeah.
You know what I want to find? I've never. I don't know if they exist anymore. I'm going to put Comic Crack in charge of this. I remember seeing when I was a kid in the late 70s. Sometimes one kid in the neighborhood would get his hands on some nudie magazine or whatever and get passed around. I, of course, liked the comics in them. The nudie comics. Being a comic book fan. And I just remember there were some really well drawn. I don't remember which magazines they were in because they're ephemeral. You got to see them for a few minutes, then they went back to whoever's they were. And I just remember seeing some really well drawn black and white comics and then Ralph Reese mentioned that he worked for a nudie magazine called Genesis, I think it was. In the 70s, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder if he drew some of those comics." Because I don't think there's collections of them. I mean, I don't think they exist anymore, except in those original magazines from the 70s.
Pull up Terrence's quote there.
Yeah, nudie mags and comics. Check. I'm all over it. Yeah, and I think Ralph Reese and some other guy, other big names in the 70s were drawing for these nudie magazines.
Yeah, it was not only artists, but there were some well-known authors that were writing for those type of magazines under pen names too.
Right,
and
right.
It was a paycheck.
I'm sorry?
What was that?
It was a paycheck. Why would they say
no?
no?
Yeah, right.
But a lot of Von Bodé's early work was published in a men's magazine. I don't remember which title it was.
But it made me look up the magazine Genesis from the 70s, which started in 1973. And you can't get them anywhere. No. Ralph Reese is alive and making Facebook posts, so you must be confusing him with someone else. Unless it's Ralph Reese, right? That's who I started following.
Yeah. No, he's still alive unless he died in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Who am I thinking of? Reed Crandall? Maybe no. Who is it? He's been dead for a while. Reed Crandall, right?
Does it begin with an R?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who was it that Liechtenstein stole from? Who has that?
Oh, that was Russ Heath.
Russ Heath. Maybe you're confusing Ralph Reese with Russ Heath. And I think did Russ Heath die recently?
Within the past couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe you're confusing Ralph Reese.
Within the past couple of years.
Yeah, maybe you're confusing Ralph Reese with Russ Heath. That's what I would think. But like I said, I looked up and you can't. It's like if you. I looked on, of course, eBay to see if they had any of those. They had nothing on eBay. I found like a magazine specialty site that you could get these old Genesis, but they're like $20 a pop. So I was like, you know what? I don't
know
care
if
that much.
Yeah, I don't know if you can find adult magazines like this, but I know there are a lot of British sellers on eBay who will have complete magazine runs as PDF files, and they'll sell them on disc.
Yeah.
Said I haven't looked for adult magazines, but
yeah, I like I said, I don't know. They were kind of like
pulps and stuff like that. Yeah, those are all over the place.
They were kind of like third-rate nudie mags from the 70s, so I don't know if anyone archived them. I mean, I'm sure somebody did, but I'm not sure that it's anybody who's like in touch with the internet and wants people to know they did.
Neil Gaiman's first published article. I can't. It was either in a men's magazine or it was in a role-playing game magazine, one of the two. But there was this the first thing he ever got published.
Wow. I wrote a couple of very short Brazilian porn mag. Ha. Yeah, but for some reason, I've always had in my head to track down those really well-drawn comics. Maybe Ralph Reese did them in the 70s.
Not like that, but I imagine there's probably a compilation of Little Annie Fanny from Playboy.
I have one of those.
Yeah.
That stuff exists. Anything from Playboy is going to exist, of course.
Right.
But I bought those just for the Kurtzman layouts that are in the back, just to see how Harvey Kurtzman worked. Is beautiful. He did these layouts in tracing paper, drawing with different colors on each layer of tracing paper. I've got a big Eric Stanton book. He's been in buff. My friend gave me once. So that like I said, he's pretty well known. So that stuff exists in book form. I don't think any of this 70s stuff does.
I know that name, but I don't. Was his art style kind of like Bill Ward's was?
Sort of. He shared a studio with Steve Ditko. That's where you know his name from. And supposedly Ditko worked on some of Stanton's stuff, and Stanton's. Yeah, it's a big giant book that isn't well. I don't think it's a Taschen book because it's not very well made. My spine fell apart.
Yeah.
Well, it's a big, thick Eric Stanton book, but
Taschen books they're well made and they're very expensive.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm going to walk into the other room and get it just to show you.
You look confused, Paolo.
I'm looking at some. There are at least 2 Taschen Stanton books. 3.
It is a Taschen book.
There comes one of them there.
But it's fallen apart. I mean, it's glued and the glue is completely gone.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah, and the paper is very light and cheap. I don't think this is one of their higher end books, but happy birthday, bitch! I got this for my birthday from my friend Bunch.
That's funny.
Oh yes, let me see. What year did this come out?
I'm going to guess early 90s.
97.
Okay, late 90s.
Printed in Italy. I would say this is not one of the better made Taschen books.
Now, just imagine how much that book would weigh if they'd used heavy paper stock.
Yeah, it weighs almost nothing. It is so light.
And for a book that big, that's unusual.
Yeah. But in the back, they have something on Steve Ditko.
Eric Stanton's Blunderbroad, a comic serial.
Oh, there's also he draws all this bondage stuff and
yeah. Apart from the Taschen books, there are a few bondage books. There's The Art of Stanton, Master of Bizarre, and Fantagraphics put out a collection called the Kinky Hook under their Eros imprint.
You meant happy birthday, Beach.
Happy birthday at the beach.
How far do you live from Jones Beach?
Jones Beach?
Uh-huh.
As the crow flies, not far. As the car drives, far. Because Jones Beach is Long Island, which means I have to drive through New York City to get there.
Right.
Can't you drive to Connecticut and take a boat?
I could, I guess. You're right. I could drive right down to the Hudson River, which is a few miles away, and dig a boat there too. But it would probably take me an hour to get to Jones Beach with no traffic.
Okay, I'm just curious. I heard
Last time I was there was like 1990 on the 4th of July. Oh, it took a long time.
I've heard a lot of people talk about it.
I just found a cover of a Spanish edition of a Stanton book.
Yeah.
Was he American?
Yeah.
Well, obviously he was if he had a... Never mind. Well, that was stupid of me. If he had a studio relationship with Steve Ditko.
Right.
Duh.
Right. And they think you can like find some Eric Stanton work and Ditko work, and they think you can find some Ditko work and Eric Stanton work because they, like I said, they maybe helped each other out or just switched things up to because they were bored. So
you could make a real interesting article or book just about different famous artists that worked in the studio with another artist as they were, coming up.
Oh yeah,
there's a bunch of them.
Definitely. Oh, one of those Ralph Reese stories that was funny was about them. Joe Rubenstein wasn't very popular with them, the inker. And Joe was only 16 at the time and very serious. So it's like Neil Adams was going away for the weekend. So he was like, Joe, you're in charge. And Joe took him seriously. So it was Ralph Reese and 4 other guys, or 3 other guys. I forget who they were, but they were all in the thread telling their stories.
Yeah.
They wanted to mess with 16-year-old Joe Rubenstein. So they all pretended they were tripping. So here's this 16-year-old kid who thinks he's in charge of the studio while Neil's gone.
Yeah.
And these 4 grown men artists all pretending they're tripping. And he's just freaking out. And so he tries calling Neil because he doesn't know what to do. He's got these 4 tripping artists on his hand. He's going crazy. Of course, Neil's away for the weekend, so he can't get him. And he ends up getting Walter Simonson, who has to come in from Brooklyn to see what's going on. And he goes in and sees the 4 guys are obviously goofing around. And it's just like,
really?
Really? But it seems that Joe never forgave him for that.
That's kind of funny.
Lots of funny stories like that on Ralph Reese's.
It would be interesting if any of if they were goofing around and pretend they're on LSD, if they drew any really bizarre artwork.
Yeah. Oh, you can pretend to be on. You can pretend to be on LSD and then write something, draw something really weird. You really have to be on LSD.
My Stanton book is smaller, softcover version of the 10. I have a series of adult magazine books that might have some comics in them. We'll look tonight. Okay. In the dark by himself. Yeah, matter of fact, I'm going to have... Those are the guys I'm going to have to ask about the Marshall Rogers. Because they told another story about... Neil Adams didn't like drugs. And all these guys were sort of, this is the early 70s. they're all sort of pot smoking hippies who are
Mhm.
working in continuity studios with him.
And Neil's a very tie-wearing businessman kind of guy.
Right, and he did not. He was okay with them, maybe smoking discreetly late at night, but he did not want the studio smelling like pot when he brought business people over.
Right.
Mhm.
So they mentioned it was, I think it was Michael Kaluta who one day had some pot brownies there. And it was late at night, and Neil was looking for something. It was late at night. He was working away. He was looking for something to eat. And and they were like, "Oh, he should have known better than to eat Michael Kaluta's brownie." And the brownie was supposed to be 4 doses, and Neil ate it himself,
Oh.
and ended up on the floor freaking out until he thought he was dying. He thought there was something wrong with him. And he was dying until he calmed down. He's like, "Oh, did you?" One of the guys was like, "Oh, did you eat the brownie that was over there?" And once he found out it was just pot, he was better.
I'll have to ask Mike.
The unknown, the fear of the unknown was gone. But
Mike tells some great stories too.
No, pardon me, it wasn't Kaluta. Marshall Rogers. Wrong.
Okay.
Marshall Rogers was the one who had the pot brownies, not Michael Kaluta. I don't
I'm
even know
glad
if he
you
was
said
in
that
there.
because I was going to ask Mike the next time I talk.
No. I got that wrong. It was Marshall Rogers. I said that because now I'm going to have to leave a message on Ralph Reeves to ask him about. I've told you before the story of the Marshall Rogers Spider-Man. That's the story where Marshall Rogers, and I heard the story at Marvel, but I never saw the pages, so I don't know if it's a legend to me. Marshall Rogers was hired to do Spider-Man, early 80s, except he was doing a lot of drugs at the time, cocaine, I was told. And he showed up with the Spider-Man pages, drawn exactly as ordered, except instead of Spider-Man, he drew Jesus. This is Marshall Rogers. So, of course, they had to reject the pages.
Right.
And he didn't get the Spider-Man gig.
They didn't.
I've never seen
Jesus.
I wish I could see the pages to confirm this. So I'm going to have to ask those continuity guys.
Had you ever done a Google
if they
search?
know anything about those pages.
Had you ever done a Google search? See if anybody had scanned them or anything like that?
Yeah, I never saw. I figured if somebody had them, somebody had made copies of them at Marvel, they would have showed me the copies with the story, but I've never heard. But being that took place in like 1983, and I was there in 1990 at the earliest, that's a long time to hold on to things.
Right. Oh, goodness. That's funny.
But I'm gonna have to, because if anybody will know, it'll be those guys who shared a studio with them at Continuity. I imagine they would, or maybe he wasn't at Continuity, because I think Continuity Studios for the comic book wise was at its height in the 70s. I don't know about the early 80s. Because everybody I hear
all the
about was
continuity
there.
Stuff I remember probably came from the early 80s.
Well, you're right. They were still there making They were making comics in the 80s, but it's just that all like the big names I know were there in the 70s.
I see what you
Mm-hmm.
mean.
Exactly. Jesus, web swinging between New York Vinny. I want to see those. I want to see that.
And could he have done something for Uncle Ben?
He probably wasn't in the story.
Maybe.
But yeah, raised him from the dead. He drew it exactly like a Spider-Man story. They said, there was no, except he drew Jesus.
I've got this mental image now of Jesus like perched on a side of a building, and he's got his street clothes, so to speak, wrapped up in webbing, stuck up underneath an awning somewhere to hide them. Oh my God, that's funny.
Ooh, this one's for Terrence. I got a read, rip, and slab to do. Okay, I just came up with this one. Just popped into my head. Here are your 3 books. One you read, one you rip, one you slab. The Black and White Nexus, number 3.
Mhm.
Critters, number 23. Scout, number 19. And what all 3 of these 1980s books have in common,
Tough one.
they all have flexi discs in them.
Okay.
So the Black and White Nexus number 3, I think the flexi discs in that one was sound effects. Critters number 23 has an Alan Moore song in it.
Ooh.
And Scout number 19 has Tim Truman's band
I actually have
playing.
that. Yeah.
So do I. That's the one I have. Has Tim Truman's band playing a soundtrack to the comic.
Right.
So there's your flexi disc read, rip, and read, rip, and slab. Which one do you tear up? Which one do you slab? And which one do you read?
The slab for me would probably be the Alan Moore one, because in the future that's going to be even worth more than it is now. The one I would read would be Scout, because I already have that one and I've read it.
We all seem to have the Scout book.
And I guess the other one by default would be the one I'd have to rip up.
You'd rip up Nexus number 3?
No, Critters.
Critters 23. You said you were going to slab Critters 23 because it's the Alan Moore song.
I have read the Nexus one digitally.
So you're just going to rip up Nexus? Tear up that flexi disc?
I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't need Nexus in black and white.
What's the point? Seriously.
It's the black and white Nexus. It's original 3-issue mini.
I don't like Nexus in black and white. I still have the graphic novel that collects the first black and white issues in black and white. But then I bought it again when I bought the Dark Horse reprint collection in color now.
He's ripping up Scout, slabbing Alan Moore, and the other sound effects on it. Yes, no, Nexus has the sound effects. Yeah. Critters has the Alan Moore song, and Scout has the soundtrack. So it's like even 3 different flexi discs thing. Then do a video about playing the sound effects record over the top. King Spoet's in the house.
Well, see, before you rip it up, then you rip the files off. You get the flexi disc and you transfer the files to a digital.
No, you got to rip it right up. There's no scanning it in. There's no scanning in the flexi disc.
But then again, after you rip it up, you can always buy another copy.
You can do whatever you want after you rip it up, but you got to rip it up. You can't do anything you want before you rip it up.
I'm trying to think which one would be the cheapest.
I don't know. I have no idea what the price is. I imagine Critters 23 would be the hardest to find. Because I've never seen it. I didn't know Critters went up to 23.
Maybe. The Nexus one would be hard to find too.
Maybe.
At least with the flexi
people
disc.
know about Nexus than they do Critters.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of
That's a tough one. That's the whole point, to make it tough.
Get a 3-sided
coin. I think I'm going to slab Nexus. Read Critters just because I never have, and rip up Scout. Because I've heard that flexi disc, and I don't need to hear it again. I'm okay. As much as I love Scout, I don't think I'm ripping it up out of those 3. Read Moore's and mail him the pieces. He might get happy about it.
I think he meant rip.
Rip, yeah. Did you say Nexus had the sound effects record? Yes. Nexus. I'm pretty sure that one had sound effects to go along with your reading. Like Scout had just music, their band playing.
Yeah.
But I think Nexus had it's probably on YouTube. I wonder if they have the Nexus #3 flexi disc on YouTube.
Let's find out.
But I don't know what why 1980s indie flexi discs popped into my head for this. But I actually had to look up Critters #23 because I knew about the other two, but I'm like, what's a third? I knew there were more flexi discs from the 80s, but I didn't. And Critters, there was also one, I didn't add it to this, in Raw #4 has a flexi disc. That's not really a comic. Rip Moores and mail them to pieces.
Teddy Payne and the Blue Bears with their very special guests, Alan Moore and the Sinister Ducks.
I have the reissue of the Spirit LP, which is like from the 50s, the original one. They reissued it in the 80s as a picture disc. Let me see. I think I've shown it before.
I found it.
There's a 2-page Usagi Yojimbo in this issue of Critters.
Ah. Yeah,
That's why I know Critters from, is for their Usagi Yojimbo connection.
Right. That's where I never read it, but I knew he existed there. Every little bug. This is the Spirit picture disc. Came out in 1980 something. 1298, 1920 in Canada. Originally from 1948. 1987 this came out. Every little bug's got a honey to hug but me.
Tim Truman's record is on Discogs.
Everything is on Discogs.
Almost. Timothy Truman and the Dixie Pistols, Marauders, published by Eclipse Records in 1987.
Tim's actually a really good guitar player.
Oh, and also the only album published by Eclipse Records.
If you look in the private chat thing, you'll see the URL I sent for that Nexus song.
My friend Rob just messaged me that one of my favorite singer-songwriters, Nancy Griffith, passed away. I did not see that.
Not familiar with her.
She's been one of my favorites since the 80s. Most people don't know she exists, but she's been a singer-songwriter for a long, long time.
But if you click that link I sent, that's the Nexus song there on YouTube.
Nexus. Flexi disc comics. Haven't seen. I wonder when the last flexi disc comic to come out was.
Oh God. Had been sometime in the 80s.
Yeah, because I don't even remember any in the 90s or anything. Now they'd give you a link to it and something, but
yeah,
wouldn't be nearly as fun as a flexi disc.
Those things were played, but if you didn't have the right, if your turntable wasn't set up a certain way, those things were pain to get them to line to get.
Oh, they were terrible to listen. They had terrible sound quality.
Yeah.
They were difficult to listen to. They were often warped. It was, whew.
Okay, FemForce number 50 in 1992 as a flexi disc.
Wow. What's on the disc?
The FemForce theme.
Some punk rock zines did flexis as well. Wow, that's funny. That must have been funny.
I can't think of any comics that actually had a promotional CD of music.
There was Marvel Music in the 90s. They put music in comics. Matter of fact, did any of you guys listen to that Mort Todd interview on Comics Historian?
Yeah.
I haven't listened to it, but
Mm-hmm.
I saw another reference to my friend Will that lives up in Portland, Maine. Met Mort Todd at I don't know, like a concert or something a few days, or maybe it's a local show. I don't know. But he met Mort Todd a few days ago and talked his ear off about working, with certain artists back in the 80s.
Oh yeah. Mort can talk your ear off. He's a good talker.
And I saw an article about where he went in and got Bill Gaines' autograph and took a tour of the Mad Studio
while he was editor of Cracked.
Exactly right.
Right. He told that story in there.
That takes some cojones.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
while
a Flexidisc.
Cracked.
There's a Flexidisc in one issue of the Norwegian Phantom magazine.
What year?
1984.
Okay.
So that Paolo's got a whole new section to collect now. Flexi-disc comics.
I might post the link to this GCD page in the Foreign Comics Collector. See what they think.
Phantom is huge in Norway.
Yeah, they produce original stories.
Yeah.
And here's the first of the comics I bought this week, which is issue 5 of a 6-issue mini that's now an ongoing, The Silver Coin, which has a different writer each issue and drawn by Michael Walsh, except this one was written and drawn by Michael Walsh. It's the origin of the Silver Coin, which it turns out was cursed by a witch. That's why the silver coin exists. As they were hanging her, she cursed a coin.
So when it was used, was it in mint condition?
It's always in mint condition, I think. That's part of its power.
Oh, Terrence mentioned the 3 words that you never want to hear in that sequence.
Street Poet Ray had Miss Tree 50 had a Flexi. I have that one.
Miss Tree I'd be interested in, but Street Poet Ray, no.
I don't know what happened to my Street Poet Ray issues. I don't remember getting rid of. I actually bought them before he was published at Marvel.
Yeah.
Street Poet Ray had a couple issues published by Blackthorn, I think it was, and that's where I first heard of him. I forget what year it was. I got a few in the collection. There was only a few.
Mm-hmm.
And Street Poet, I think there was 2 issues published by Blackthorn. I had them in my collection for the longest time. They've since disappeared. I don't know why. But Marie Javins always likes saying that, remember, the same agent who brought us Street Poet Ray also brought Marvel Akira. So,
1 out of 2.
Yeah. But like I said, my Street Poet Ray issues seem to have gone missing. It could just be a Raiders of the Lost Ark situation, and they're misfiled somewhere.
Maybe they're just disintegrated because they were just embarrassed to be.
I wish I still had my Street Poet Ray T-shirt.
Oh, God.
Because when Marvel published Street Poet Ray and I was working there, they handed out Street Poet Ray T-shirts.
Wow.
And I loved that.
I read a scan of Street Poet Ray #1. Yeah, I understand why that thing did not sell well.
It was definitely not a Marvel, but like I said, I knew who Street Poet Ray was when they Marvel said they were, and I was like, Marvel is publishing a Street Poet Ray book? I mean, that's like an indie comic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember they used to talk about in the news groups about Street Poet Ray, the Marvel's lowest selling title in all history.
Yeah. And I think he didn't even write them, if I remember correctly. He didn't draw them.
Didn't draw them
He was
yet.
like a street poet in Los Angeles who would write these poems. And then they hired some woman to draw images to go with the poems or something. I think that's how it went. It's been so long since I've seen them, I don't remember.
She was Japanese, right?
I think
she
I
had a Japanese
vaguely
name.
remember her being Japanese, but since I don't 100% know she existed, I'm not really sure.
Maybe none of them existed. Maybe they were both Banksy.
Yeah, Comic Crack and I were the only ones who bought it. Like I said, I bought Street Poet Ray, the Blackthorn ones, right off the stands. I bought the only 2 issues that came out. So I liked it just because it was weird and indie, you know?
From what
It wasn't cool.
Yeah, from what I've read about it, it seems like it's the Highlander 2 of the comic book world.
No.
No?
The Highlander 2 of the comic book world would mean that there were other volumes of it that were good.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Terrence bought them right off the racks too, Street Poet Ray.
Damien has joined us.
Damien has joined us. And Damien, did you see that I was just showing Silver Coin is now an ongoing? I liked this issue too. I think I liked this issue and last issue the best, which is good if it's going to turn into an ongoing. And just the opposite of turning into an ongoing. At the end of Bitterroot 15, it gives us the end, but then gives us this is not
scene.
the end of Bitterroot. What the hell does that mean? That means they're going to stick with it, but maybe not. Yeah, ongoing. Yeah, I'm going to stick with it too. I've been enjoying Silver Coin. We'll see what else he's got to offer. But I'm like, I have no idea if there's going to be another issue of Bitterroot or not. Because sometimes, like with these indie books, they'll go, well, this is the end for now, but we're going to get some more issues out next year. And they just never do because the reason they stopped was it wasn't making them money.
That's happened so many times.
So many times. And I believe them. I believe they want to make more issues.
Right.
But if there's no money in it, you can't. But it was a nice little. It wasn't even a wrap up. It was just kind of telling more of the story. So it was strange that it's ending. But I also don't think they have an end. They've written themselves into a corner. And because they even said in the afterwards, "Oh, this turned into something different and bigger than when we started." I'm like, well, that because they had the Bitterroot is a horror story, and it's what do they call it? The Cthulhu guy.
H.P. Lovecraft.
It's not Lovecraftian. It's racecraftian. There's the word. It's a word that got invented in the last 10 or 15 years by black horror writers who kind of use racism as like the basis for their horror. And it's got to be called racecraftian. So all these monsters come out of hatred and racism and evil. And so that's what this was. In Bitterroot, it takes place during the Harlem Renaissance. This family of monster fighters, and it's like, and the monsters are kind of feed on and are from another dimension. They come to our dimension to feed on the hate of people, and they also twist people and turn them into monsters. So if you kind of let hate overtake you, you become a monster too.
So were they summoned here because we all hated the Street Poet Ray books?
Yes, they couldn't. Okay. Hey, I liked it. You know, just because it wasn't any good doesn't mean I hate it. But at the end of this is the third story arc. At the end of the second story arc, the monsters took over. The monsters all made it from their dimension onto Earth and are like messing with everything. And it was kind of like the monsters almost won. So this whole story arc has been them dealing with the Earth being overrun by these monsters. But they have no way of defeating them, at least not right now. And this one was actually they did the old. This really annoyed me. They did the old, one old guy who's like reading old books and stuff is like, I've got it. I think I figured out the secret. And he's running down the street and the monsters kill him. And no one knows the secret. And it's like, oh, come on. Why did you do that to me?
That's true. It would be interesting to see that whenever they started writing that project, if it was written at the same time or before the Lovecraft Country series on HBO. It's very similar kind of a setup.
It's the same. It's the same genre that's been racecrafty horror. They call it. Horror comes from our fears and guilt, so racism is a good source of metaphors. Yeah. But they have cool little articles, and I haven't read this one yet. In the back of the book too, like here, bitter truths on some different sort of intellectuals and Lovecraftian horror guys by you that give you a little. And I like these little articles at the back. They're good stuff. That's where I learned the term racecraftian from. Was these articles?
There's one Lovecraft scholar that's very divisive in the Lovecraft field. Jess Nevins does not like the guy at all. Can't say I blame him either.
Oh, and I got to show you this one. I've showed this before, but I've finally read it. My book I got out of the library, To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee, the graphic novel by Fred Fordham. This is really good. Unlike the Great Gatsby one, which was mediocre, this is excellent. This might be the best adaptation of anything I've read. I mean, it is just so well done. I haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird since I was in high school, probably. But wow, did he... My complaint about the Great Gatsby one was the expressions didn't match the writing, and this guy's just so good at expressions and so good at capturing these children in childhood. And there was a sequence that have you guys read To Kill a Mockingbird?
Nope.
Not.
Once again, it's a book about it's kind of a coming of age book that deals with racism too.
Right.
And it's about these two kids, Jem and Scout, who are 8 and 10 around then, maybe 2 years of their life. So it's like, Jem is the older brother. I think he's 10 to 12, and Scout is the younger sister. She's maybe 8 to 10, and it goes through their life. And Atticus Finch is their father.
Okay.
Only seen the Mockingbird movie. Oh my goodness! You guys read the book or at least read the graphic novel.
Yeah, I've only seen the movie too, and the last year.
I like this better. I like the book better than the movie. I like the graphic novel better than the movie. But it's a good movie. But the story, like the Gemins, it's mostly about the kids in their childhood. But their father is a lawyer in small town, the South, and whenever the book was written, 1950 something, 1960, probably written in the late 50s, and you slowly find out that he's defending he's a defense lawyer. He's defending a black man who's accused of raping a white woman. And of course, it's an impossible task, and it's dealing with all the racism of the South, and it's all told from Scout's point of view, the little girl. and it's her, learning about the world and little white girl learning about the racism in the world. And also, it's also about there's sort of this boogeyman in their lives. Their neighbor called Boo Radley is his name. And he's just this guy who never comes out of his house for whatever reason. And and a little spoiler, at the end of the book, Boo Radley comes out of his house. I won't tell you how or why, but just the drawing and the sequence of when Boo Radley came out of his house made me well up. It was just so well done. This is definitely one. I put it on my Amazon wish list. I'm definitely going to get a copy of this after I return this one to the library. Yeah, both book and movie in elementary school. Yeah, is one of the characters based on Truman Capote when a child? Not that I know of, but I don't know that much. I'd be back later. I don't know a lot about To Kill a Mockingbird. It's my sister Jennifer's favorite book, though. I don't know. She might know more. But I was because I've been on such a Great Gatsby kick. I saw the Great Gatsby book and took it out of the library, and I took this one out just as a lark, kind of. So I was like, all right. I do occasionally tear up, No, I'm not going to tell you it happens that often. But when Boo Radley came out,
if he bought Street Poetry, he's got to be a tough individual. So.
You want to tear up for sure? Want to make me tear up for sure? What's the name of the song? "Kill Kelly" by Robbie O'Donnell.
I don't know.
You wouldn't know the song unless you know Irish folk music from the 90s or something. It's a song that's written. The songwriters found some letters in the Library of Congress. And there were letters from a father in Ireland writing to his son who emigrated to the United States. And they take place over like 40 years. And it's him just giving news from home, except the son never made it back home to see his dad. And it's just, "Kill Kelly, Ireland, 1860. Each one of them is each verse is from just him giving, and it's just the saddest song you've ever heard, because the end of the final verse is his friend writing him to tell him that his dad died, and it's just it's like a 6-minute song, and it'll make you tear up.
The thing that always makes me tear up is the last 10 minutes of The Iron Giant.
I've never seen that. Truman edited me.
Oh, you gotta watch that movie. It's so good.
Everyone says that. I'm just not an animation fan. I have a hard time watching animated stuff.
I don't trust people that don't like that movie.
Well, I've never seen it, so you can still trust me.
But yeah, the end of it every single time, it gets me just like right here.
But I was told my inner child was dead because I didn't like what was that movie? The Fantastic Four, The Incredibles?
Oh, The Incredibles?
Yeah, I didn't like that one, so.
I liked it.
Someone told me, yeah, your inner child is dead if you don't like that movie. I'm like, sorry.
Basically, it's The Fantastic Four.
Yeah, I turned it off halfway through. I had enough of it.
I like that quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, most people do. Most people I know love that movie.
I don't even care to watch I don't watch Disney movies. I don't.
Nah.
Well, Disney also made live action movies too.
Not lately.
I
can't remember the last Disney live action movie.
They got a live action movie coming out.
Oh yeah, they did live action versions of Mulan and plus that monstrosity that they did with the Lion King.
It was the Lion King.
I did see Into the Spider-Verse. I watched that one.
I haven't seen it, but I have it on my watch list on Netflix.
I thought it was okay, but it's everything I hate about modern comics in terms of there's a million Spider-Man. I don't care about any of them. None of them are special. This Spider-Man goes away. We got another Spider-Man right behind him. That's the only reason I wasn't fond. I thought it was well done. but I just didn't care. Why am I going to care about a character that there's a million of? I just don't.
What's the name of the character that replicates? There's a DC character that replicates himself. I can't think of his name.
Not the Multiple Man?
No, he's one of the characters of Legion, I believe. But
okay.
He makes Jamie. His name's Jamie something. He makes
Jamie Madrox.
Jamie Madrox.
He makes copies of himself.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like that.
He's in the X-Men.
Oh, I know what Scott's going to read. Scott is getting on DC versus the vampires. No. He wants to see Batman stake some vampires.
No, I want to see him stake the people that keep making vampire movies ad nauseum.
Yeah.
And then after that, he can go into the people that make zombie movies ad nauseum.
I don't need ad nauseum. Just make one zombie movie. Stake that guy.
The only guy that gets a pass for me from doing anything with zombies is William Stout, just because it's William Stout.
Now here's the weirdest book that I read of in this. And it's weird because it's DC too. It's called Soul Plumber.
What?
Soul Plumber?
Soul Plumber.
Did Don Cornelius have a hand in this?
Okay. Here's the description. After attending a seminar hosted in a hotel conference room by a mysterious group called the Soul Plumbers, Edgar Wiggins discovers what he thinks is the secret to delivering souls from the thrall of Satan. But after stealing the blueprints and building the machine himself out of whatever he could afford on his salary as a gas station attendant, Edgar misses the demon and instead pulls out an interdimensional alien with dire consequences for all mankind. What?
That doesn't...
By Marcus Parks, Henry Zabrowski, Bette Kissel, and John McCrae.
That, to me, it doesn't really sound like a comic book as much as it sounds like a B-grade 50s science fiction movie.
And also, let's just break down this description for a second. He thinks... Okay, he goes to a meeting of the Soul Plumbers. He's a disgraced former seminary student working at a gas station. Don't know why he was disgraced. Discovers what he thinks is the secret to delivering souls from the thrall of Satan. So I assume that means regular people, right? You die, you go to hell. You're in the thrall of Satan. He's discovered something that can take you out of his thrall, maybe send you up to heaven, I don't know. But he misses the demon? What demon? He gets an alien instead? Where's the demon come from?
It sounds to me like he's using the equivalent of the Ronco pocket fisherman.
Yes.
To fish for souls, and he just happened to hook the wrong one and reel it back.
Yeah, he hooked an alien. I was just like,
wow.
Wasn't Cthulhu Lou and Black Hammer a plumber? It could be. Could be a movie pitch disguised as a
Black Hammer.
But even as a movie pitch, it doesn't make that much sense.
Wait, if he's working in a gas station, why is he a plumber?
Maybe he wants to improve his lot in life by learning how to be a plumber.
Nothing in that book makes sense.
Nothing.
They should hire the street poet guy to write that.
I wouldn't go that far.
Because even I just thought of that. Even if you are trying to improve your lot in life and be a plumber, you don't go to the conference room to hear from the Soul Plumbers. You go to plumbing school.
Yeah.
I
was trying to figure that one out.
Well, they missed the perfect opportunity because if they're going to make a movie of that, they would have to have it starring Christopher Plummer.
Huh.
With an afro.
Starring Christopher Plummer.
Yeah, almost at the beginning, I was thinking it was going to be like a blaxploitation kind of thing.
Yeah, Soul Plumber.
No.
Wasn't Harley Quinn's book canceled? I just like to point out that Harley Quinn #8 is out.
Okay.
Why
Well,
did they bother to
there'll
cancel
probably
the
number
book?
12 and then a number 1.
Oh, it's Fear State. So it's Harley Quinn Fear State #8.
Okay.
That's right. There's a Catwoman Fear State. No, unless it is Harley Quinn #8 and Fear State is just the. Oh, and look, DC. I didn't realize DC has special little symbols on their covers now. Harley Quinn's got 3 diamonds there in her trade dress, which I guess means Harley Quinn tie-in. And Catwoman has a little cat mask in her trade dress, which I guess means Catwoman. That would mean that Harley Quinn and Catwoman have more than one book.
So now the books have emojis printed on them, basically.
Oh yeah, Batman's got a little bat in his trade dress.
Okay.
And we've got... Did any of you guys read Mark Miller's Magic Order?
Not
We've
yet.
got Magic Order Volume 2 coming out. It's Mark Miller and Stuart Immonen. I read the first volume, and it's going to be a Netflix series too. That's probably why they're putting out a Volume 2. But it was like the one Mark Miller story with a twist in it. I was like shocked. I was reading it because I always call Mark Miller the master of the expected. I like some of his writing, his stories. But he telegraphs his moves. You see what's coming. He either pulls it off or he doesn't. But you never look for a twist because there's no twist coming, except for in Magic Order. I was like, oh, the last issue there was a twist. I was like, what? A twist in a Mark Miller story? How crazy!
So it's kind of like the anti-EC version.
Yeah, everyone seemed to like the new Suicide Squad. I still haven't watched it.
That doesn't.
By the way, I didn't watch it, but did you see the video Tim posted?
Which one?
Debunking comic book resources Suicide Squad plot holes.
No, I think I have a bookmark, but I haven't watched it yet.
I know I haven't watched it yet because I haven't seen it. But that's a 45-minute video.
Yeah.
I was like, it was really important enough to him to make a 45-minute video debunking comic book resources.
Sometimes if you get mad enough at something that you feel could have been a lot better than what it was, yeah, you can go on a 45-minute rant about it. Absolutely. I
just found that fun. Like I want to watch it, but I haven't watched the movie yet, and I was planning on watching the movie. I don't know, sometime.
Oh, I mean, I was
like, I gotta see it. I want to know what got him so worked up that he put out a 45-minute video on comic book resources plot holes and debunking comic book resources plot holes.
You would not want to get me started on J.J. Abrams' version of Star Trek because I could go on with that. The last thing I read by Mark Miller was a miniseries he did for Image. It was called Starlight, and that was actually pretty good.
Yeah. That was once again that was as straightforward as it gets.
Right.
It was, if I remember Starlight, it was a Buck Rogers takeoff.
Somewhat, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He went back to the stars, he destroyed the evil empire, and he went back home. No twists,
basically.
But well done. Who did the art on that? Granov?
Yeah, it's a Slavic. I've got him as a Facebook friend too, but I can't remember. Golan Parlov.
Parlov, that's it. Yeah, he did a nice job.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last one I bought of him was Reborn, the one with Greg Capullo art.
Okay. I may have bought an issue of that. I don't think Miller's era is coming to the end, because if it was, they wouldn't be putting out a new Magic Order just before the series comes out. So, I got a feeling it's not coming to an end. Videos complaining about movies and TV show go, yeah, that could be. But Tim's never been about views. He's had views. He's not had views.
Yeah.
I don't think he put that out because. What was that?
If something hits you just right.
Yeah, Like I
Makes
don't
you
think
mad, makes you glad,
Yeah.
or whatever. I
That's why I want to watch that one to see what it was, because there's no way he put that out for views. No way. Parlov was great. Yeah, he did a nice. I really enjoyed that series he did with him.
I didn't read it, but I think he did some work on the Punisher after that too.
Yeah, I know he's done some work for the Big Two. I don't, but I didn't like. My friend Bunch actually knows him, so
Okay.
who gave me the Eric Staten book with.
Yeah, I'd actually never heard of him before I started reading Starlight. So.
Yeah, I'd never heard of him before Starlight either. But Bunch was like, "Oh yeah, he's a good guy. He did this and that and this and that." I was like, "Oh, okay."
I'm actually looking forward to when I have a budget to buy new comics again. Probably just to find all these artists. I'll be like, where the hell was I? You know, this guy's great. You know, I love it when that happens, when you discover something new like that. It's like, this is awesome. Oh, this has been around for 5 years now. Where the hell was I when this happened?
Yes, Sleepy, if you go back to Tim's channel, the last video he did was like a 45-minute video that's titled Debunking Comic Book Resources, Alleged Plot Holes in Suicide Squad. And I haven't watched it yet because I haven't watched the Suicide Squad. But I just want to know what got him so worked up to make that. I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah, I haven't paid any attention to anything that Comic Book Resources does.
Yeah,
for quite
I don't
a while.
usually.
It used to be a good
occasionally I
site years ago.
It used to be, yeah. 15 years ago, the last time.
No.
I remember when they started paying more attention to movie news, and that's when it started going downhill.
Yeah, they had a changeover. That's what happened to what was it? The Comics Buyer's Guide too. In the early 2000s, I had a subscription to Comics Buyer's Guide. It was a weekly, expensive subscription.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim is a deep thinker on trivia we love. Something offended him about that comic book resources, or like the. I'm gonna have to watch Suicide Squad and then his video. So I'm more excited about watching his video than Suicide Squad.
I probably would be too. Comics Buyer's Guide, really, the end for that came because of the internet.
Because of what?
The internet is really what killed CBG.
Well, the end of it for me too was when they made it into a magazine, a monthly magazine. Were you still around for that?
Yeah. I still have.
So I mean,
90% of my CBGs. I used to have a subscription to it too, and I loved getting
I didn't
every week. It was great.
Wow. Yeah, but one of the things I liked about it, even though it was an expensive subscription, was you got all your favorite columnists every week. As soon as they went to magazine, you got all your favorite columnists once a month in movie news. It was all movie news.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like
back when it was like a fold-out paper, newspaper format.
Yeah.
That was CBG was great back then.
Yeah.
Comics never had bigger fans or better ambassadors than Don and Maggie Thompson.
Right. When it was a newspaper, that's when I loved it. But I don't think I ever really started buying it till like 2000. I didn't buy it all through the 90s.
I had subscription. So I'd love going to the mailbox, getting it every week. They were great.
Oh, yeah.
When
did CBG start? When are the early issues
it
from?
Started in the 70s with Alan Light. It was just called the Buyer's Guide back then.
Right.
It was like a prozine format. It's like, as far as zines go, it's one of the better published ones. It was, it's kind of basic, bare bones at the beginning. It was just all ads for people selling comics to the mail. As time went by, they started adding in articles and columns and news and things like that. And Don and Maggie bought that from Alan Light's, I don't know, late 70s, early 80s maybe, somewhere through there. But yeah, that was. I still have very, very fond memories of Buyer's Guide, and I always will.
And another comic I got this week. It's Deep Beyond number 7, is this? Number 7 of 12. And this one has gone into sci-fi territory.
I like it.
And now let's see, it's real, and now we had a flashback to before the beginning of our story and other guys, and it started out as this sort of post-apocalyptic story where people had to live in these domed cities, and there were rebels. I don't know what they were rebelling against. But that part of the story quickly ended with like the second issue when some of the rebels took off in this underwater thing to find this woman who was one of the rebels' sisters or something. And then they found out this little underwater lab, 70 or 71 for CBG. Okay.
Yeah. Way back.
It's very, I wouldn't say, it's, I guess you could call it digital. It's very slick and European. But
if it's a slick European book, it has to do with science fiction underwater. I'm all right with that.
It's not American. It's not American very digital. It's more European very digital. So it's kind of European art, comic book art. I'd say is more illustrative traditionally. American comic book art only got illustrative in the digital age, so it's a different. So our like illustrative comics are very digital. European illustrative comics like this one is digital, but it's sort of in a more European tradition where you could do the same stuff in watercolor, if you know what I mean. Like American stuff, it looks more digital because everybody learned it during the digital age. So I think this is, I would call it digital, but there's a distinction. But now we found out that this underwater city has been around or lab really, not as big as the city, has been around for 100 years because some super advanced civilization from another dimension are talking to us through it. But there's some weird stuff where time flows differently on this animation and their dimension. So like a week that passed in our dimension, 10 years passed in their dimension or something like that. And they're so much more advanced than us that we have nothing to offer them.
Oh my God. You know how many comic books Sergio Aragonés could have done in their dimension?
Yeah.
2 billion, you know?
But anyway, it's like the people from our Earth ended up over there because of shenanigans going on our Earth. And they're just like hanging out in this other dimension trying to figure out what's going on. And over in the other dimension, there's no real government. There's just, because they have a completely different, they're so alien, they have a completely different culture. And things just kind of go at their own pace. And it's not like any of these Earthlings are prisoners, but they can't leave. They can go anywhere they want in this city, this giant city. But they can't go back home. So they're like, we're prisoners here, you know. So they're trying to figure out what the heck they're doing with their life. Meanwhile, we flash back to earlier on in the story, 20 years ago, when the other Earthlings are trying to figure out what to do with this alternate dimension. And we, of course, want to weaponize it and use it to our advantage or whatever. But like I said, these people are so far ahead of us, they barely pay attention to us. They'll squash us like ants every now and then if we get to be pests. But the rest of the world doesn't know about this. So he ended up, there was some weird calculation where they figured they were so advanced, but for some reason their civilization wasn't going to end. So if we could, or was going to end, pardon me. So if we could just hang on for 20 years, their civilization was going to end and we could pick it apart. So they sent this guy over there secretly to find their secrets. But then their civilization didn't end. He didn't find their secrets. And that's where we are in this issue. And it's interesting, but I don't even know how to describe it. It went from like, you know, post-apocalyptic to underwater adventure to hard sci-fi with time travel.
So it's kind of like the opposite of Love and Rockets.
Yeah.
Where it started out as sci-fi and then became more slice of life.
Right. But I've been enjoying it.
It's funny you mentioned that. I got the digital copy because the physical copy hasn't come out yet. But I contributed to a Kickstarter a few months ago, and there's an artist named Steve Conley. And he did some science fiction related comics called Amazing Space Stories, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But this new one that he did takes place underwater, and there is another dimension involved. So it's like kind of sounds slightly similar.
It is. I've never read anything similar to this. It's so kind of weirdly out there, but it's a little tough month to month keeping track of all the characters, though. I have to say that I have much trouble until this month when some woman showed up, and I was like, because I realized that we started with our original 6 or 8 characters, and they've been introducing 2 new characters every issue at least.
Sounds like.
So I realized with issue 7, I'm kind of like, who is that? I didn't have any trouble before this point.
Yeah, Starstruck did that a lot, where they introduced more and more characters as time went by.
So our Starstruck reintroduced their whole story all the time. It became like, all right, we'll ignore these characters. Here's some new ones. So I was like, All right, I got another read, rip, and slab for you. I don't think I did this one last week. A 1970s Marvel comics that were once worthless. I don't want any of them, but now are worth something. Ms. Marvel #1, Nova #1, and Marvel Spotlight 32, First Spider-Woman. One you got to slab, one you got to rip up, and one you keep for reading.
I would slab the introduction of Spider-Woman. I would read Miss Marvel, and then I would rip up Nova.
I think this is one where I'm like, I don't read. I've had all these books, or at least read them, and none of them are very good. As a matter of fact, I read. I think I got a Miss Marvel #1 True Believers and read it only recently. I was like, wow, no wonder I didn't like this comic as a kid. It's not terrific.
Well, see, what I do is after I'd sold the slabbed one, I would use those funds and go back, and I've already got a complete run of Micronauts. But then I would go back and complete my run of Shogun Warriors.
3 copies of Nova 1 Gotham. I used to have Nova #1, but I got rid of it in the 80s because I was never going to read Nova #1 again.
I'd rip Nova, but I would slab Miss Marvel and read Marvel Spotlight. You know that story has absolutely nothing to do with how Spider-Woman turns out.
It's like a complete. It's like a complete. Didn't they make her in a lab?
Yeah.
No, Joey. The game is I give you 3 comics. One you have to slab, one you have to read, and one you have to tear up. And the reading one stays in your collection. So make it a good one.
This is just an intellectual exercise.
Yes. We're not actually. None of us actually slab anything, but we do read stuff. I don't think any of us rip stuff up, but I have on occasion.
If I had Street Poet Ray, I might consider it.
I think I like the cover to Novo #1 best. So I'd slab that just so, I could look at the cover.
I've got a vague memory of what that one looks like in my brain.
And I'd read Marvel Spot. Yeah, now I'm trying to remember what it is. I keep picturing other covers. I'd read Marvel Spotlight 32 and I'd tear up Ms. Marvel #1. I think that's my order. Because I'm okay with tearing up Ms. Marvel #1 and never reading it again.
Yeah, I can't say I'm really interested in any of those 3 to any great degree.
Well, that's the game. They all have to be equally as uninteresting to me. At least, I have. it's tough picking out three equally that's why I like to keep them in the same eras around the same time.
It would be tougher for me to pick 3 ones that I really liked.
Right. Like, I was thinking about doing this game for like recent comics that came out this week. But that'd be hard to do. Like, pick 3. Try doing this game with 3 Marvel comics that came out this week. I'd have nothing to judge them on.
I haven't read a new Marvel comic in 15 years, probably.
Like, I did one. I did one for Marvel 2012. Okay, here are 3 comics from around 2012. Once again, one you read, one you slab, one you rip up. Yeah, low price for Nova #1. I know, that's kind of, I never thought that would happen. All right, 2012 Marvel, Hawkeye #1, which is the David Aja Hawkeye, I think. A versus X #1. That's the Avengers versus X-Men. Start of that. Or Wolverine 300. There you go. Those are your 3 comics. The hardest one in this is to pick the one to read.
Yeah.
I don't want to read any of them.
What was the first one again?
Hawkeye #1, which I have read.
Okay.
I don't want to read again.
I would slab Wolverine. I would read Hawkeye #1, and I would rip up A versus X.
Okay. What about you, Sweaty?
I would read Hawkeye. I would slab A versus X and rip Wolverine.
I think I would slab Hawkeye #1. Just because I like that cover. Once again, I'm picking my slab ones on how much I like the cover
art on this.
I am going to rip Wolverine, mainly because that's not issue number 300. That's when they were monkeying around with the legacy numbers, and number 300 is after number 26 or whatever.
You're ripping that one on general principle.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to read Wolverine 300 and rip up AVX. I think that's
I'm going to slab it because it's an event book that some idiots would pay money for.
Maybe. But like I said, it was I went to like best comic or best selling Marvel Comics 2012 just to try to figure out which ones I could possibly make. And then they had to be kind of equally. AVS is often printed well over 100,000.
I've never been a fan of crossover books that cross publishers.
Okay, JLA Avengers.
The indie books are a little different, but
JLA Avengers is excellent. I reread it recently, and my comic shop guy at the time said they made this book 2 years too late, because by then the world had moved on. We had the Authority, we had Morrison and X-Men, and he said if this book was Morrison and Quietly, he would love it.
I kind of said the same thing, but Tim was right on this. He pointed that was one of the most popular books of its time. I don't remember it being as popular as it actually was, because I said the same thing. I'm like, I think Avengers versus JLA came out a little late and didn't get as many sales as it could have. And Tim was like, no, everybody was reading that book. That was one of the most popular books. I was like, I didn't remember that at all. Then later on I looked up the sales, and he was right. Mm-hmm. That was one of the most popular books of its time. I just don't remember that.
There was some anticipation because everybody who wanted the 1980s crossover was still alive and reading comics.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it was one of the best-selling comics when it came out, and I didn't remember that at all.
There's another reason.
Making not a peep.
It had been a few years since Marvel and DC had done a crossover. The era of the intercompany crossover had gone, and they did that one.
And I'm also
they took advantage of all the publicity around CrossGen because of the contract loophole on Paris's contract.
right.
Because he would only leave CrossGen to do Avengers JLA.
Wasn't
Although I
didn't
have
that
to wonder
actually-
if Mark Alessi actually wanted that to happen. Because
I'm
Mark
just
Alessi,
wondering if didn't it come out after CrossGen was gone? No.
no.
What year did JLA Avengers come out?
2004.
Oh, was that early? Okay. Then yeah, CrossGen was still around. Because I think CrossGen went out in like 2005, right?
I think whatever book that Perez did, he left after 2 issues to work on Avengers versus JLA, and then I think he went back, didn't he?
And let me preface my love for that book, which I didn't read until like 3 years ago, by the way, by saying you have to like George Perez huge cast crossover books, superhero books. If you don't like that genre of book, this comic isn't going to make you like it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those books I can read like a Sunday comic strip these days. I wish I had the oversized hardcover, which is out of print and way expensive, because if you look at the design of that George Perez did on the pages, each spread is like designed to be its own Sunday strip, yet read as a comic book. It is the best designed thing I've seen George Perez do.
Okay.
But next time you pull it out, just pull it out and flip through the pages. Don't even read it. Like I said, the story itself, I think, is well done for that type of story. But that's my favorite type of story. But as those type of stories goes, it's well done. But like I said, it's the art that really makes me go, wow. The design work he did in it is spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the story itself was not good because, and I remember people complaining in issue number 1 because it was a ripoff of Contest of Champions.
Yeah, I thought the story
and of Avengers versus Defenders.
All those stories are the same to me. All those, Atom and Hawkeye and Hawkman versus those to me are like JLA stories from the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
They always did that in the JLA, and I always hated. You had these two big teams going off against each other, and then you'd have these two guys against these two guys. So that's the sort of tradition they were doing it in.
And Batman was always smarter than all those guys put together.
Right. That's always the way it went. And I always hated those stories as a kid. So it's not I'm not going to tell you that it's the story itself is, but the story itself is well constructed for that type of story. Really, I think Busiek wrote it, right?
Yeah.
He did a nice job constructing the story. But if you don't like that kind of story, you're never going to like it. But the artwork, whether you like that kind of story or not, the artwork is brilliant on that. It's probably the best George Perez ever, I think. Just because of the sheer amount of design he put in it. I mean, he designed these pages with all these superheroes on them to all be beautiful. Just messaged my comic book store. Sell Nova 1. What can I get? First, you got to slap it.
I remember when Shooter told the story of why Avengers JLA didn't happen in 1983, and then Marv Wolfman said that Shooter was making shit up.
Yeah.
What I think actually happened, the guys upstairs didn't want to keep advertising DC. They had already done a few of those. They were good, but Marvel was outselling DC everywhere. Why should they advertise DC's comics? I think that, to me, that's what happened, and they told Shooter to do whatever he could to get out of the deal without breaking the contract.
That could be it. Who knows? Like I said, I really wished I had got that oversized hardcover. But my copy of JLA Avengers sat around for 15 years before I finally read it. That's how disinterested in it I was. Because I don't like that type of story generally. So the fact that I like it so much now is kind of amazing to me. I think I got my copy when I was still at Marvel. That I never bought it. I picked it up around the office or something. And then it just sat there till, I don't know, 2019.
Mm-hmm. Rob Liefeld used to have the original art for the 80s crossover. The 20 pages that they did. I think Marvel and DC actually had to rent the pages from Liefeld to print them in the hardcover special edition that reprinted the new series.
They have those pages in there? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the pages themselves weren't bad. I think there were a couple of continuity mistakes, but they were easily fixable.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that the big guys told Shooter to put the kibosh on it, because everything that was a problem, they could have handled it at a lower level. They didn't even have to get Shooter involved.
What was that last series that Perez did that I bought? Oh,
Crimson
what was
Plague?
The name of it? No, it was after Crimson Plague. Hold on, let me take a stroll over to my George Perez section. Let's see.
When they started Guerrilla Comics, I was very interested in everything that they were going to put out, and then everything was canceled because they lost their financier. I was enjoying Section Zero, the one that had Tom Grummett art, and
right.
And I was going to buy Crimson Plague and Empire. Empire was later finished at DC.
Shock Rockets, is that one of them?
Shock Rockets, it finished. Then Busiek had it reprinted at Dark Horse. I have the Dark Horse trade paperback.
Was Shock Rockets written by Kurt Busiek?
Yes.
And then art by Stuart Emmerman?
Yeah, I think so. I bought that.
I remember that.
But, right, George Perez's Sirens, that was the last thing he did that I bought, and it was not very good.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote that one too. That's why it was not very good.
It's
okay.
The Crimson Plague book he did, was that like another bad girl kind of book?
Yes, and she got her power from her period.
I don't remember that part
quite.
of it, but I remember seeing like ads for CG or something.
Yeah, it's science fiction. People would giggle at the description, but it was actually kind of serious. Her blood is toxic, kills everything in sight. So it's not a good idea if she gets into a fight and she's cut.
Wait a minute.
But then there's period every month.
How did her blood get to be toxic?
I can't remember.
I don't remember.
It just
and
was.
That came out from two different publishers, right?
Yeah.
I think, because it seems like I remember seeing ads for that, like back in maybe CBG or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought it twice, I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the issues that had already been put out by Event Comics were published by Image as the number 0. Then number 1 came out, and then Guerrilla Comics was done.
Yeah.
I don't even remember Guerrilla Comics at all.
And
it was Guerrilla Comics from Dark Horse? No, that was
Image.
Legends. It's from Image.
Guerrilla Comics was from Image when Busiek, Wade, and Perez, Kitson, and Immonen, and Grummett.
Okay. Well, that just reminds me. Did you guys read the Substack news this week?
I just heard the term for the first time. I'm still not. I didn't.
Me too.
I was going to look it up and see what it was about.
Yeah, and
it's digital comics, but I don't know much more about
it's
it.
a big nothing burger.
Except they threw a lot of money at some writers.
Yeah, they did. But here's the thing: Substack is one of those new services that that lets you publish whatever you want, but then you have to get people interested in paying you to read or watch whatever it is that you're doing.
Someone said it's Patreon for writers.
I was going to say, what's the difference between that and Kickstarter?
Because you have to put out you have to put out things constantly because you're paid every month. So if you don't put out something in a particular month,
so it is like Patreon.
Okay.
Yeah, except with newsletters instead of artwork or whatever else you got. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it from before comics, it was based on like like people subscribe to their newsletter.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good if you're interested in an individual creator.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. If not, probably not going to interest you very much.
Yeah. It's a newsletter that comes in your email. But most people these days use newsletters rather than blogs because no one goes to blogs anymore.
I do.
Because you're old.
I make one.
So yeah, that's right. Because I'm old.
Only old people still read blogs.
RSS reader that tells me what I'm interested in too.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of the nudie man? I think it was Genesis. That's the Genesis is the one Ralph Reese did work for.
It would be funny if you looked that up and you just got a bunch of nude pictures of Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins.
I have to remind myself to go read Michael Vassalow's blog or one of the other ones where they do the historic Marvel minutia.
Oh, yeah, that one's nice. They don't update it very often, but it's good.
Right, but I always have to remind myself, I haven't checked in a while. Let me see if there's something new.
Yeah, I'm way behind, but I always like Todd Klein's blog.
Oh, yeah. He's been doing a lot of Gaspar Saladino. Yeah, he's been doing a lot of his logos for the last 2 weeks. Gotcha. But yeah, I still use Feedly, a news reader. So I have to read all my blogs on there. And I check that every morning with my breakfast.
I still use the classic view on Feedly because I like it better.
But
yeah, Feedly's great. I have a whole bunch of stuff on there.
Yeah. Feedly.
Yeah, I like Feedly.
But yeah, Substack threw a lot of money at comic book writers.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this originated outside the comic book field.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
They already. But the question I have is how are they going to get comic books to people? Because who is it? Was it James Tynion that was one of those DC writers whose contract was just up for DC, now has an exclusive contract with Substack, and so do about a half dozen other comic book writers.
These guys are going to have a lot of trouble publishing anything on time.
But he said, it was so much money that he had his lawyer check it out and said, "Is this real?" And then I read another place that a writer, it was a columnist for the Times or New York Times or something, said and he told the amount because he wasn't interested in it. It was like $250,000. Substack was offered him to write exclusively through them. But to me, it's like, comic book writers, are they going to have to hire artists? I mean, what's going on? I don't know what it means. I mean, to hire comic book writers to write newsletters, who's going to subscribe to that? Nobody. People want to see comic books from comic book writers, but without an artist, they can't make comic books. So it's like I don't know what the deal is.
Are they doing digital distribution only, or are they also going to do print as well?
Someone said they're going to be printing trades through Dark Horse.
Interesting.
but I don't know what that means.
I've been wondering about Dark Horse the past few years. There's been some odd stuff going on there.
Well, they lost all their big licenses.
Yeah, they lost all their licenses.
Even Buffy is even a
Hellboy is a big license they still have.
What was that?
Hellboy is this big license they still have.
And I don't even think that's a big license. I mean, not compared to Aliens and Star Wars. I think Dark Horse is just his publisher.
Well, maybe in terms of ongoing series, for new series, monthly sales. But Hellboy is an evergreen now.
Right. They're attached to comic artists, and some are doing courses and instructional. Yeah, I saw that too, and I was like, well, what comic book fan wants to subscribe to instructional videos from their favorite comic book? They want to see comic books.
Yeah, I'm one of those weirdos that gets like, I got he did it as a DVD, but years ago Craig Russell had a series of instructional DVDs, and those are really worth watching.
There's great instruction. You can find great instruction stuff on YouTube. Yeah, I don't know
if these guys want to earn their money, they're gonna have to hire somebody to produce 2 pages of comics per week. Otherwise, it just isn't worth it. And even then, I think they're paying too much because I think they're asking $8 a month.
Yeah,
that means they should put out 2 comics a month, not 2 pages a week. They would need to put out 44 pages.
We're gonna have to see how it all works before we can judge it, because I just have no idea.
Yeah, I could see that working for like smaller writer artist creators that have a following already.
Yeah.
But
that's always the problem, having a following already with all this. Like I want to get my own Patreon going, but without a following, it's really tough to get. It's kind of pointless.
But then again, those guys that kind of fit in that category are already doing Kickstarters anyways.
Right.
Jeff Smith, Terry Moore, people like that.
Yeah. So who knows what's going on?
It's an interesting idea, but
we'll have to see how it all works out, because I don't know. It's like I don't know anybody who subscribes to people on Patreon, so. But I know people are successful on it.
If I had more money to do it, there's a few people that would support on Patreon.
Right. But I'm not that caught up on the scene.
It's a very niche thing as well.
Right. And how niche is Substack going to be? That's the question I have.
I don't think it's going to be niche enough, I think, is the problem. I could be wrong.
It doesn't look like it. From what I've seen of other stuff, I mean, mostly it's journalists trying to do independent journalism, even if a lot of it is hobby writing.
Right.
How does it translate to comics? You got to put out a lot of finished product.
So does that mean Spider Robinson writing for?
Yeah.
And they went for all writers too. I guess that's what they know, but getting just writers from comics is kind of pointless.
I wonder if they're chasing movie money.
Probably.
Noise podcast on Patreon for a while, but that was it. Yeah. I subscribed to Substack for Chapo's Trap House and Useful Idiots podcast. Oh, see, I didn't know there was a podcast on Substack. And how much do the podcasts cost you on Substack? That's a question.
I subscribe to too many podcasts already as it is to keep track of them all.
Yeah.
I mostly use the
samples.
I mostly come to YouTube for the podcasts.
Absolutely.
Because by the time they even sell an option, I think this time the superhero bubble, it's not bursting, it's deflating. It's slowly deflating, and by the time they can properly monetize this contract, they won't be able to sell the options.
I remember several years ago, I was talking to Sam Sakai at Heroes Con. He said option is the best place to be because you get the money, but they haven't messed up your property yet.
Right.
Yeah, but they only give you like $300 or something.
It depends, but it's not big money. It's not life-changing money.
Yeah, it depends on what it is.
And the option runs out.
Right.
after 5 or 7 years. So you get $300-500 for 7 years.
No, it's more like 10 grand to 30 grand, I think. But still, I mean, that's a nice chunk of change for you and I. But
Right.
over 5 years, that's not.
No,
Yeah,
not 5 years. No.
It's only a small amount. But yeah, I once heard that Hollywood people like you to hand them a graphic novel, they're happy about it. So that's how they can. When you hear people saying they're chasing the movie money, that's what they're doing. They're getting graphic novels that they can hand to Hollywood people.
I remember when Jeff Smith was approached by Disney to option Bone. He said they didn't even offer him enough money to buy a sports car.
Right. Which is probably 10 to 30 grand was what they offered him.
Who knows? I didn't. That's
not enough money to buy a sports car.
At
Even
the
if it's on the 30
time,
side.
at the time, I think what year was that? 96, 97. Okay, at the time, 35 grand. 35 grand didn't buy a Mustang.
No.
Not even the cheapest one. Maybe you could get one on a discount, but I think, yeah, you couldn't buy a Mustang on 35 grand.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and the other thing I got this week that I wasted $10 on because my name's in it. This is a $10 freaking comic book. I got the second printing of Rocks and Minerals. As you can see here, this is one of the Bad Idea comics that I did the production on. But the first printing has got a yellow logo. And the second printing has got a red logo. And the second printing also has the logo down the bottom that says Bad Idea Double Shot. That was supposed to be on the first issue. But due to a production error, which ultimately traces back to me, it wasn't on there. Well, this is a good. I don't know if you've ever. This is Tony Millionaire does the backstory, and Matt Kint and Adam Polina do the front story.
Tony Millionaire of Sock Monkey.
Yeah, that Tony Millionaire.
Tim will hate those.
And Matt Kint writes the back, and this is like Matt Kint writing heartwarming stuff. I was like reading this going, I keep waiting for the cynical conspiracy Matt Kint story, and it's not. It's like this sort of fairy tale heartwarming story, which is kind of cool. And Adam Polina is an X-Men artist from the 90s who I knew in my Marvel days, who I think then moved to Japan to work in the video game business in like the late 90s. And this is the first comics he's done since then. I think he might still be in Japan. And the back is Tony.
Yeah, if I was a multi-billionaire, I would like to have like billions and billions of dollars, Jeff Bezos billions. I'd like to have the option to buy the rights to conceptual art to some different video games that were never actually made. Because there's some real, I've seen some scans that people put up, like Michael Kaluta is a good example of that. Stuff that never actually got made is like, this stuff is gorgeous.
You might not have to be a billionaire to buy that. A millionaire might be able to do it.
Fair enough, and then have extra money to play with on top of that too. But
I'm just saying, buying conceptual art from failed video games might not be as expensive as you think.
Possibly, I guess it depends on who owns the license, how big the property.
Right. Because you could buy stuff like Mort Todd, who we were speaking of before, the editor of Marvel Music back in the days, has been printing some Charlton stuff, which I think he bought the rights to some of Charlton's stuff, or stuff from Charlton Comics over the years. And I don't think he bought it for very much. Me too. I'm 1,000 there.
Yeah,
$5 a month, but I think, yeah. That's if a Patreon is $5 a month, that's like buying a comic. That's not. Which is why when I'm making mine, I want to make an art magazine a month. That at least will give people some value.
right.
And I got plenty of art to put in there. I've been working on it, but it takes a while to finish the first
I
one.
mentioned earlier, if I had I don't have the budget right now, but if I did, I would support. There's a few different artists I'd pay to support.
Yeah.
If I knew they were going to do, new stuff, like Steve Bissett would be a good example of that.
Right.
If you set up a Patreon to fund what he's doing for Tyrant, I'm like, sign me up.
Right. He's still working on Tyrant?
He's talking about it. Yeah.
I've heard tell of it, but I haven't seen it. But I don't follow him anywhere, so why would I know?
I follow him on Facebook. He's usually complaining about political stuff.
He gets 4 hours content a month from chaps, less from useful idiots. Okay. That's not so bad for $5 a month. OnlyFans has been running ads trying to get artists to use their platform. I've seen ads on
OnlyFans has a stigma, so
yes,
yeah,
it's the porn one version,
right.
But they've been running ads at least on my Facebook feed, trying to get artists on OnlyFans. And it's always got like 50 comments that are like, really? I don't think so.
Yeah. I think that's the problem. If they're trying to branch out and diversify, it's going to be very hard to get past that stigma that they have.
Yeah. It is. And people making comments like, oh, I tried to post my artwork, but all anyone wanted to see was my feet. King Spoet likes stigma. We know that. I've read his comic. He likes stigma. He likes to.
I didn't realize that Substack originated outside the comics industry.
My friend Bunch, who I've mentioned 1,000 times, likes King Spoet, likes that edgy stigma stuff, and Bunch has gotten banned from Facebook so many times because he likes posting stuff that pushes the envelope. And he's always like, goddamn Facebook bad. He's always mad that Facebook is censoring him. And I'm always like, Bunch, you like pushing the envelope. Facebook doesn't like people to push the envelope. Haven't you noticed that? But he still pushes the envelope. He's got 3 Facebook identities, and they keep all getting banned for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And he's like, why did they ban me for this? That one was nothing. They should have banned me for this other one. I'm like,
there's your answer.
He's caught the eye of the algorithm, so they're always watching him.
But I've heard other people complain about it too, because there's a couple like illustration groups that I'm a member of on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes if there's minor nudity, especially female, sometimes they'll take it down. Somebody put them in Facebook jail for a month. So.
If you want to not be censored, you better be on Twitter. They're the ones that let you post nudity. I
tolerate Twitter, but there's just something about it I don't like anywhere near as well as I like Facebook. I think Damien's the opposite. He prefers Twitter. But.
An artist named Ralph Neese, who passed away November last year. I don't know him.
It's not ringing any bells.
My band was banned from over 20 venues, closed too.
Oh, wasn't he touring with Gigi Allen?
The Murder Junkies?
Yeah.
Gigi?
Yeah.
I think he said he was touring with Merle, Gigi's brother, too.
Okay. Because I could see why.
Yeah, you can see bannings happening with that crowd.
Had a reputation.
bad reputation, got no chance of shaking. So you guys read any good comics lately? Murder Junkies.
I haven't read it yet. Pull this out, but
What do you got?
I saw this laying on the shelf the other day, and I thought I really need to get around to actually reading it because I've had it for I don't know a couple years, not longer. So, Hellboy in Hell.
Hellboy in Hell. Okay.
Yeah, it just like screamed at me. It's like, pick me up from the shelf. I'm like, okay. So I'll probably
I haven't read
sometime next week. I would guess.
I haven't read enough Hellboy. I mean, I haven't read a lot of Hellboy. Mike Mignola kind of leaves me cold. His panel-to-panel artwork. Not that I dislike it. Whenever I read Mike Mignola, I'm okay with it. But there are certain artists who, when I just look at their art, it leaves me cold. But when I read it, I like it.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah. Plus, we were on Jerry Springer's Shock Rock with the Mentors and Guar. Wow.
Are you familiar with the Mentors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Talking about bands that got banned from venues. Guar not to. I mean, Guar is basically just Gallagher in monster suits.
They came. Guar visited Marvel a couple of times in the 90s. Yeah.
I saw Guar at Dragon Con one year when I went down there. They were highly amusing.
My Marvel friends who are Guar fans, all of their pictures with Guar. Bought the new Madman omnibus. That's
cool.
Is it as good? I used to have the old Madman omnibus, but I sold it a few years ago. Yeah, he was. You remember the old Madman omnibus? I guess this is a new printing of it. Was one of the best printed ones I've seen in terms of the spine. It had a spine that would lay flat. It was just beautiful. I mean, I needed the money, and it was really expensive. I sold it for $200 or something.
It has been a long time since I pulled out any of my Madman books and read them.
Yeah, I still have all my original books, but it was one of those. I sold a bunch of my expensive omnibuses because I needed the money.
I remember
the ones that were out of print.
I remember a few years ago, somebody actually broke into Mike Allred's house and stole some of his artwork.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Our chick Jenny was on the segment with Duce. I was on personally when they showed clips of us performing. Ah. Well, Duce. I think it's the one of the most common Facebook song links comes not from the Mentors, but I think it's El Duce's second band. I can't remember the name of right now. Well, there's a song called "There's Jackin' Going On," and my friends, a few of my friends, post that link on Facebook all the time when they want to insinuate there's jacking going on.
I think in a perfect world, there would be a macro that I could use. Every time that I got rickrolled by somebody, it would turn around and send them back the Judas Priest song "Painkiller." It's like, don't you rickroll me. I hate that.
I did not see the El Duce.
No, I haven't seen the
documentary.
I'm not sure I want to. I imagine it would be amusing at the very least.
Speaking of a book that called to you, what's calling to me since I had it out on my top of my every week. Here's this week's. I put one old comic on the top of my printer just so I can look at its cover all week. And last week it was an issue of Zot. So now I want to go back and read my Zots. Because I haven't read Zot in a long time.
I want to go back and reread all the Understanding Comics series that Scott McCloud
did. Yeah. So, yeah. Understanding Comics is good stuff, but I always understood them. So, but I want to go back and read. Have you guys ever read Zot?
Part of it, not much.
Oh, it's good stuff. If you can get your hands on it.
It is kind of hard to find these days.
Yeah, I think they put out a collected edition of it, but it's all out of print. And it's undersized.
Yeah, and I also never read the newer series that he did. It was about a guy that made sculptures.
Oh, that's a graphic novel.
Right. I can't remember the title of it, but
The Sculptor.
What I read of it looked pretty interesting.
It's The Sculptor. It's over on my shelf. It's a good one. It's a good one. I have a Zot. I have the Zot. Yeah, the Zot complete collection is what I was thinking of. It's a little smaller than a regular comic, though, right? In height and width, I think. But
has he done anything in the past 2 years or so?
No, I think The Sculptor was the last thing he did.
Okay.
And that was the sculpt. Did you read The Sculptor?
No, but I read some reviews of it. And from what I read of it, it sounds like something I'd be interested in reading.
Oh, it's really good. It's about that thick, too. It's long. It's about an artist who makes a deal with the devil or whoever he made a deal with, that he would be able to, because he was a failure as a sculptor. He was, wanted to be an artist. He was young, in his early 20s, trying to be, but he couldn't. He was a failure. And so the devil gave him the power to sculpt stone with his hands. But in, I think it was like a year, he would have to die. And he made the deal. And so then the story went on. A very touching story, too, because he had a girlfriend or whatever. But
maybe
I'm going to reread that one, too.
Maybe that's how Stonehenge got built.
Similar
druids back then made the same deal, and then they all died after a year, and then that's why nobody knows the actual construction method.
There we go. There's The Sculptor.
Oh, that is? Yeah, that's a hefty tome there.
Yeah, it's let's see. First Second was the publisher. 488.
No, almost 500 pages.
But good stuff. And it's in dual shade.
Mm-hmm.
So it's blue and black.
Gotcha. But he's a good example of like a creator I wish was more prolific.
Yeah.
Same thing with...
but a 500-page book would take a while. Let's see.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Especially doing his own dual shade. When did this come out? 2015. So imagine it could take you... Well,
I didn't realize that.
How many pages a year do you think he could do at this point?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know how fast he is. I'm sure he's working digitally now.
Yeah, but still, 100 pages a year? That would be about 2 pages a week.
Yeah, that's pushing it.
Yeah, that could be slow. But 4 pages, well, when you think about it, getting 4 pages a week done, pencils, inks, letters, writing, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a.
It's not maybe Kirby fast, but it's looming in
maybe
that.
Maybe 2 pages.
Right. Yeah.
2 pages a week is realistic.
Right.
So, especially if you want to put vacations and have a life in there. So maybe a book like this, 500 pages, will take 5 years.
Seems like I saw a mention of Paul Chadwick there that talked about he's working on a new Concrete story.
Yeah.
The first thing is, well, it's about damn time.
Have you ever read any Scott McCloud, Paolo?
Only Understanding Comics.
Okay.
I also read Destroy back in the day, too.
Oh, yes, I've got that one, too. That one's a classic.
Yeah.
But I imagine that one's hard to find now, too. I mean...
Yeah, especially since it's oversized, too.
Right, it's oversized. So what comic book store is going to stock those? You'll probably find it online somewhere.
See, I'm the exact reader that loves this oddball format stuff that nobody else likes.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger the book, the better. Yeah.
Speaking of Michael Allred, Flight, was that the name of it? Vertigo put out a Michael Allred comic, early 2000s, late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, it was like a third the width of a comic.
No,
opened up.
Huh, interesting.
I think the name of it was Flight, and it was like really weird to read.
The only Flight I remember was like an anthology series, but
I'm trying to remember where. Did I put mine in the Mike Allred section?
you look confused again, pal. Oh, there we go.
I just noticed. I was looking at some. I just noticed that Ablaze are publishing Captain Harlock. They're the ones who do the French Conans in the U.S.
Gotcha.
But the French Conans, because they're made by different people. There's a new one. They came out every 6 months. Right. Captain Harlock has a new series. Of graphic novels made in France, and they're going to do 5, but they're all made by the same guy. So why are Ablaze putting out one of the miniseries right now when they're going to have to wait another year for the second album to get published?
Maybe they're just trying to capitalize on the popularity of Mango with a Harlock tie-in. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's going to take a while. This Brazilian guy that has a YouTube channel, he interviews mostly French creators, and he interviewed Jérôme Alquier last week. He published it last week, so he interviewed him in the last month or so, and he said that his contract is for 5 books. So why are they rushing it for U.S. publication?
I'm actually looking forward to reading all those Robert E. Howard projects that Ablaze has done.
Mm-hmm. I wish they do, after the Conan ones are done, they do others with the other stories. I'd like to see them actually do the real Red Sonja in comic book format. The Shadow
because I mean the character that was based on only appeared in just that thing a handful of stories.
One story, The Shadow of the Vulture, but it doesn't matter because it would be the real Red Sonja finally in comics instead of the fake Red Sonja in the Ivorian Age. Yeah. Referring to Red Sonja as the fake Red Sonja after decades.
Right.
This is the book I was talking. It's not called Flight; it's called Vertical.
Okay. No, I do not remember that. That's interesting.
It says it's from Vertigo Comics too.
Uh-huh.
That actually looks familiar.
Steven T. Seagal, Mike Allred, Philip Bond with Laura Allred. And it says, do you remember the first time you fell? Vertical is a mad, modern love story about 2 wild teenagers who met at the Warhol factory in the pop-colored world of the 1960s. And it reads like this.
What year did that come out?
2003.
Oh, okay.
So
I was going to say, if it came out in the 90s, then they would have predicted the format of the iPhone plus.
Yeah, it's.
I think I remember seeing that in previews, yes.
No, I do not remember that at all. That's interesting.
And I think my friend Bunch, who was a Vertigo editor, told me this was like one of Karen Berger's pet projects or something.
Gotcha. But I like oddball format stuff like that.
This is an oddball format. I'm gonna have to reread this. I don't remember this at all. Looking through it right now, I don't remember it at all.
I can remember, even though I didn't read them, I can remember a lot of Vertigo titles just from ads and reading about them. But that one, that one didn't lodge itself in my memory. That's interesting.
Oh, so it's a one-shot off form. How many comic book shops do you carry this
too? Yeah, comics retailers hate those because they're not stereotypical format. That's the reason I like them.
Fans don't like them either a lot of times because, like, at least this one you can put in a bag and board. And I think I had it just lying. I didn't even have it in a bag and board for like a decade. It was just lying on the top of some books.
Right.
Before I finally put it in here and put it in my Mike Allred section.
I have a book that's formatted like that, except mine's horizontal instead of vertical, and it's a
I've seen some like comic strip books formatted like that.
Yeah, it's a strip book. It's by Travis Charest, and it's called Space Girl.
Okay,
it's really good. I mean, I wish he would continue doing. That's another good example of a creator I wish was more prolific.
Yeah, has he done anything in recent years?
If he has, I don't know about it. maybe I don't know. Maybe he's working on movies or video games. Who knows? I'm not really sure.
Are you guys a fan of Bernie Mireau's The Jam? Ever
I
seen that
know
one?
about it by reputation, but I've never read it.
Yeah,
It was one
I've hardly heard about it.
Mike Allred's a big fan of The Jam.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite '80s indies comics, but Bernie Mireau hasn't been in Miro, right? Rhymes with zero. I follow him on Facebook. That's how I learned how to pronounce his name after 30 years. But he's doing some more stuff. I think he's going to reprint all his Jam stuff and making new stories because he's been out of comics for a while.
He's another one of those niche creators where like he has a small cult following. You know?
Right. I mean, I loved his stuff, but not a lot of people did. Remember people trying to figure out the best way to protect their mouse guard comics, right?
I love Mouse Guard.
Yeah.
I mean, Mouse Guard's just square. You know, it's a square format, but Mouse Guard's good. And David Peterson, who does Mouse Guard, is doing Twitch streams now too, and those are interesting to watch.
Mouse Guard.
His coloring is fantastic.
Yeah, you like that. He's the one who's doing those Usagi covers for Dragon Bellow Conspiracy.
And I agree with you. It is really weird to see a Usagi book that the cover is not done by Stan.
Yeah.
It's good or even if it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's just not Stan. It's so different. You know?
Especially since his style is so like the Peach Momoko covers. Her style was more similar to Stan Sakai's than the Mouse Guard guy.
Right.
His just seemed even it's like, whoa, a little shocking.
Yeah.
See Usagi with fur all over his face.
Texture. Yeah.
Right. Shocking. Let's see if there's anything else in comic shop news. Jennifer Blood. Batman versus vampires. There's Batman Imposter. Whoops, where'd we go? Pretty nice cover there.
That's not bad. How many Batman books are there a month now? Like 7, 8?
What was that?
How many Batman books a month do they have coming out now?
A lot. And this is one of the Black Label ones. This one is there's a fake Batman out there killing people. Batman has to stop him and prove he's not the Batman killing people. All right. But this one's a Black Label. I noticed some of the Black Label books now are comic book size, and some of them are graphic, or magazine size. I wonder what makes them decide that. Because at first, when the Black Label books started coming out at comic book size, I was like, oh, they must have changed the format because, people didn't want the magazine size. Now they're both.
There's a comment that Madi Port put on there. What's it? I've heard really good things about Blazes the Sumerian, and I haven't read any of them yet, but what the art I've seen online is very European cartoony, if that makes sense.
I've read a couple of issues, a couple of different stories and enjoyed them, but I haven't bought them.
Yeah, they're not cartoony at all. The most cartoony.
What I mean, yeah.
The most cartoony is Queen of the Black Coast, and even that wouldn't be I guess some people would consider it cartoony if they're used to traditional superheroes. But
when I say cartoony, I mean more of an animation influence.
There's
I got Red Nails. Red Nails is the one I got, and I don't think there was. I think that was sort of traditional. I don't think there was.
Right, but they're using different artists on them too. So
yeah. Each one is a different artist.
Right. But from what I've read of reviews and other people that are Robert E. Howard fans, not necessarily just comic fans, they seem to like it because it's less watered down.
Mm-hmm.
The issues I read were okay.
Well, just the art I saw it seemed like it had an animation influence to it,
Okay.
but it
I
was
won't
more a European flair. Yeah.
I would say that to me, they're trying to do that painted realistic style without being realistic.
Okay.
That's very typical of French science fiction.
Gotcha. And I don't mean cartoony in a bad way either. I like it.
Right.
Yeah. The thing is, when you consider cartoony in a European comics context, you'd be talking about humor.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking about Lucky Luke cartoony.
Yeah.
Cartoony.
I'm thinking more like heavy metal movie cartoony.
Right.
We need to have better terminology to describe things to each other sometimes.
Well, that's because most comic book fans don't have the art education to talk about art, which is why most of them talk about the writing. I mean, that's
right.
just.
I would assume if I used the term Bigfoot style here, everybody would know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Now, to the average person on the street, there's a comic about Bigfoot. No, that's not what I meant.
Never found humor very funny. Has Marvel lost steam with it? Yeah, I think they have. Only, but I think it's just.
I think we may have talked about this last week or the week before. Yeah, I never understood the mindset where when Dark Horse had the title and was doing, they did some not so good things, but they did some really good things. Right. Nobody cares. And they jump to Marvel and everybody goes ape shit. I don't understand that. It never made sense. Same thing with Star Wars.
Yeah. It's like how many Conan comics are there right now? Are they still publishing them monthly? I haven't seen anyone mention.
Yeah, there's the regular Conan title.
Conan the Barbarian is still coming out, but I don't think Savage Sword is coming out anymore. And then there's the Avengers title where Conan is the main star.
Savage Avengers is still coming out? Okay. Because I used to see those in like when Conan first came back to Marvel, I saw it all over YouTube. People were all over Conan. And now no one is. That I haven't seen a video of the Conan comic.
I don't understand that mindset of just, Marvel gets its hands on something and it's got to be great because it's Marvel. I don't buy it.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I'll have to check the series out. This is digital art. Blondell? I don't know who Blondell is.
I don't know if all the art is digital.
The Conan art?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure probably most of the guys are working in digital format, but it doesn't.
Eventually, it's digital.
The one I saw, I haven't seen them all, but the one I saw looked more.
Blondell isn't digital.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like art that could have been done, pen and ink, paper, and then scanned it.
Yeah, I really have to look at the art.
I'd have to research the artist and see how they work. So.
And there's certain tells that certain people have for digital, but if they're not using those tells, you'd never be able to notice that it's digital.
Yeah, I mean, and a few of them are kind of in the same vein as what Julien Blondel does, but but you'll notice it's a different style.
See,
Julien Blondel did the French Elric comics.
Okay.
For most people, it would be overkill, but for me, it would be interesting to see different artists' take on a certain story. Like Red Nails would be a good example, or The God in the Bowl, whichever Howard story you want to pull out. Because I mean, you've got the traditional Barry Windsor Smith take on Red Nails. It would be interesting to see somebody else take on it too.
Yeah. Now here's the question: Titan is making new Elric books. Are those the Blondel books?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, for me, Elric in comics is Craig Russell.
I watched the Netflix Lock and Key And I thought it was too CW teen drama for me, but it was okay.
I never read the book, so that's why I didn't watch
The
TV
books are
series.
fun. Cheers. Yeah, I watched the whole thing, so I liked it on some level, but it wasn't nearly as good as the comic. There was a lot more CW teen drama show in Lock
Usually, if I haven't read the book, I'm not going to watch the TV show.
I enjoyed that. I finally started because I bought Lock and Key in collected editions.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started coming out with all those miniseries after the original series ran its course. And I never picked any of those up.
Right.
And then with either collected edition or comics. And just with the very last series, I started picking up the Lock and Key stuff in comic book form and really enjoyed it. They had one like 2 or 3 issue story that was like took place in World War One. Well, that just reminds me, they've been doing Lock and Key Sandman, and I don't think the second issue.
With the World War I thing, I wonder if that's where they got the idea to do a Sandman crossover.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how. Honestly, don't want to see Sandman crossover with anything else, no matter what it is. But that's just me.
Yeah. Craig Russell is my favorite Elric guy too, but Craig Russell is one of my favorite guys.
I wish more people knew about Craig Russell.
Yeah. He does some really nice stuff.
His Ring of the Nibelungenlied is just.
Hey, I got it. Salome is my cover of the week I've got sitting on top of my printer. What year did that come out?
Early 80s.
Yeah, this is one of his micro series, 1 of 1.
If I'm going to guess, sometime between 79 and 82. I could be wrong. But...
I think it's a little later than that, at least for this printing, because it's Eclipse. I don't know if he did it before. 86.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think there's also an artist edition of that as well now.
Oh, I didn't realize this was Night Music number 6, Salome number 1.
You're right.
But there's some classic Craig Russell for you. I used to buy all this.
You know, the funny thing is like he wasn't bad back then at all, but he's actually gotten better over the years.
He has. I mean, I loved this stuff. I loved his stuff back then, and he's gotten a lot more sophisticated with his printing too.
Yeah,
like with knowing the printing process and what he can print, and using blue pencil drawings for some parts and pen and ink for some parts.
And he usually gets Lauren Kandinsky to do his coloring, and that's a really good choice because he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Ken Brosenak.
If anybody listening to this has never read it, I would highly recommend Sandman issue 50, which Craig Russell did. It's absolutely fantastic.
I mean, just look at those faces.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he used models for those.
Yeah, yeah. But still, I can use models. They don't look this pretty.
Right. Well, it's Craig Russell. He can draw. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
He's really good.
I mean,
but it's just interesting to see how over the years he's actually gotten better and better, and that's scary because he was good to begin with.
Yep.
It's
very rare that you see progression like that in an already accomplished artist.
Right.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody.
But in terms of getting better, Mike Kaluta got a lot better from his early stuff really quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Comic Crack. The Indicia says Night Music number 6. Salome number 1. It's got both titles in there, so I never noticed that before, but I haven't had it out looking at the Indicia in so long. I was never a fan of Sandman. I've read
Sandman number 50 is you could almost read that as a one shot because it's an isolated story. It takes place with the Tales of the Arabic Nights. So you can almost read it as a one shot, even if you're not familiar with the rest of the series. But the artwork on it is is up there as good as anybody.
I don't think I read Craig Russell's American Gods adaptation because he wasn't drawing it all.
Right.
I think that's why I passed on that. But
I haven't read American Gods yet, but I've read most of Craig's other adaptations of Neil's stuff.
Me too. For
He's
some reason,
really
I skipped
freaking good
that
at it.
one.
Yeah. How many?
I said for some reason I skipped that one. I don't.
Gotcha.
I think the reason was Craig Russell wasn't drawing it all, but I don't remember.
Yeah, there was some other artists that worked on it too.
Yeah, but I'm thoroughly enjoying the Norse Gods one, which he isn't drawing all of that either. So
yeah. Had you read Craig's The Ring Cycle from Wagner?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I missed out on buying one of the reprints.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I first saw that. That was when I first knew him from his Marvel stuff, from Killraven.
Yeah.
But then seeing his own stuff was in Epic.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that Ring of the Nibelung stuff started.
Well, yeah, he did some earlier stuff that was Ring related. That's not related to the stuff he did at Dark Horse.
He would do like little bits from it.
Yeah.
Beauty Without the Beloved is like a sword through the heart. That's the name of one of his stories. Now, for some reason, I've always remembered that name because that's all it had.
He also did a really good adaptation of the Ray Bradbury story, Golden Apples of the Sun, too. It's really, really good.
I tried, like, when DC released Fables in the omnibus form, but they were the undersized omnibuses, not the over one. I read the first volume and enjoyed it, but then just didn't keep. I didn't enjoy it enough to buy more.
I get the feeling it would be something I like, but I've never read it.
It's good. It just wasn't really up my alley.
Did Bill Willingham write the entire thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He's still the D&D guy to me. I loved those D&D ads he did as a kid.
Well, it's funny to mention that because that was the first place I ever saw Bill Willingham's art. But also, that's where Tim Truman got his start.
Yeah?
Doing artwork for TSR.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to think where I first saw Tim Truman. Was it before Grim? Did he do anything before Grimjack?
Did Scout come? No, Scout came out after Grimjack.
Scout was after. Wow.
I'm not sure.
Was it first?
I'm not sure.
Since he was friends with Mike Grell, might he have worked on one of the DC anthologies?
I don't know. I think the first place I may have seen him was Grimjack, but
I could look it up. But the first place I remember seeing him was in TSR's, game material.
Ah. What does this say? Wasn't drawing at all. Guess I can skip that release. I'm no Wagner fan, but the re-encyclopedia is compelling. So, yeah. But I say maybe not skip American Gods because I am really enjoying Craig Russell's adaptation of Gaiman's Norse mythology. And he's doing the layouts on, I think, a lot of it, but he's not actually drawing it all, but he's adapting the
I think Scott Hampton's doing some work on that too.
Yeah. Knowing how much I'm enjoying that, it may have been a mistake for me to skip American Gods.
Well, even though you didn't get much out of Sandman, you might like some of Neil Gaiman's other story, like his short story material.
I have read some of the others.
He is one of the best short story writers of the past 100 years.
I think Neil Gaiman's a good writer. I'm just not usually interested in the stuff he writes. Like, I've read some of his other some of Craig Russell's other adaptations. Right. And they're really well done. I just have no interest in angels and devils and philosophizing with each other. I'm just kind of like,
Right.
Enough of this. Because I read one story, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like at the beginning of time, and the angels were building heaven, and they were constantly talking about building heaven and what's going right and wrong.
That was Murder Mysteries.
Is that the name of it? Okay. I love the Craig Russell artwork. Craig Russell drawn angels is beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, Tim Truman, first work, Sergeant Rock number 354.
Okay. So we did some. I may have seen some of that stuff. I think I was buying Sergeant Rock at the time.
I wouldn't mind seeing Tim Truman do a Sergeant Rock book now.
He didn't do Sergeant Rock. He did a few of the short story fillers.
The backups, yeah.
I mean, if you were to pick an artist to do a Sergeant Rock book these days, Tim Truman, yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, what year was that? Those early 80s?
Yeah, first story 1981. Yeah, 1981, 82, and 83. Just before
I'm pretty sure I was buying Sergeant Rock regularly by the early 80s to get my Joe Kubert fix.
Yeah, I always associate Sergeant Rock with Joe Kubert, like 95.
Tim Truman was all over the gaming magazine called Ares.
Yeah,
I think I saw that. I think I saw that stuff after I knew who Tim Truman was.
Yeah, that was a science fiction gaming magazine, and each issue of it had a game included in the magazine itself. He did a lot of covers for that one, too.
I like gaming. Ares was an SPI magazine. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, I remember that quite well. I've still got a few of them in a box somewhere.
You've got a few of everything in a box somewhere, don't you?
I do indeed. Charles Vest did a cover for SPI for a game that was called The Creature That Ate Sheboygan, which was a takeoff in 50s giant monster movies and everything. But it's very different style of artwork coming from Charles.
Do you have like a database of what's in all your boxes?
Yeah.
Could you find something if you need to?
Yeah, I can find stuff if I need to. It's not complete, but I use a program called Comic Base.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which is expensive. I mean, it's expensive compared to the collector's whatever app that everybody uses that ends with a Z. It drives me crazy.
Right.
I hate it when people intentionally misspell things with a Z on the end. I don't know what you mean. Is, but I have that one nerve that just jumps up and down on it. I hate it when they do that. But Comic Base is really good, and I've got all my, well, not all of them, but 90 to 95% of my collection cataloged on there.
All my collection is cataloged in, what's that Mac app? Numbers. That's where I have it in there now. It used to be in FileMaker Pro, but my copy of FileMaker Pro is 12 years old or something and won't run anymore as soon as I get rid of this computer, which is going to be soon.
And for my non-comics, well, there's comic stuff too, but for regular books, I use a website that's called librarything.com.
See, I had this nice little app that I was logging in all my non-comics books in.
Mm-hmm.
And then they stopped making it and went out of it, and I was like, oh, there was a waste of time. Know what I use now to keep track? Well, not to keep track of what I've read. I use Goodreads. Have you used Goodreads at all?
Yeah, I know Goodreads.
Yeah. I use that just to, when I finish a book, I scan it in, scan in the UPC. I write a little review of it and rate it just so I know. Just so I can go back and go, did I read that book? Oh, yeah.
I've done the mental math. I could read a different book each day consecutively, one a day, and take over 10 consecutive years without a day off and still not run out.
That's a lot of books.
It is a lot of books. That's true. But I can remember if I've read something or not. If I pick it up and start looking at it, yeah, I've either read it or I haven't, just like that.
Well, with comics, I can do that, not with regular books.
Oh, wow.
Batman Dragon.
Yeah.
Fanzine, Alarm.
Alarms and Excursions was a very, very early role-playing game zine that came out, 78, 79, somewhere in through there. I don't have any copies of it. I would like to, and I know that they make them available to digital format now, but they're like $3 a pop. And when you're talking about things that have been going on for 40 some years, if I wanted to get them all, they would be expensive. But
Wow.
I am shocked that anybody else here even knows what Alarms and Excursions is. That's pretty obscure stuff.
I have never heard of it.
It's,
Comic Crack has
started
never
off
heard of it.
as, you know how you know what APAs are? Amateur Press Association publications, where the people write an article, send it to an editor who will collate the things, and they'll spend their own money, collate the actual magazines and send them out in the mail. Okay. It started off as that for Dungeons and Dragons.
Ah, okay. Alarms and
Excursions. Really
Excursions.
obscure thing. Unless you're a big D&D fan, I'm surprised anybody's ever heard of it. No.
Huh. Oh, well, we should wrap this up now because I'm getting tired. So Paolo must be really tired. That's what I say every week.
Are you sweaty now?
Yeah, totally. I'm wiping my brow out constantly.
He's glistening.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know why, but my sleep cycles are all shot. I'm gonna have to start working shifts in a few weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I start working again, my sleep schedule's just all over the place now.
I have a steady sleep schedule, so I'm up early, sometimes a little too early. I get up at 6 usually in my normal sleep schedule. Sometimes when I'm up at 5, it wrecks me.
Some days I don't even go to bed till after 6 in the morning.
Yeah, I'm in bed by 11 o'clock, asleep by 11:15.
Gotcha.
Then sometimes I wake up too early in the morning. I'm like, God damn it.
I've done that too.
All right. So everybody have a good week out there.
Yeah.
Sure. We'll catch you next week. We'll see if Tim's around. Or Daisy, or I think Jeff's been working on Friday nights, so making that Kentucky money and racing, something like that. All righty, you guys have a good week out there. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.